Oh yeah, I'll start mine as well.
Hello, everyone. My name is Hardman Canada, and today we are doing a podcast. And today's subject is about the biggest video game, the biggest generation leap in video game. But unfortunately, 2019. Oh, two of my friends wanted to come, but they can't come. The first one is him. Uh, he's one of my YouTube friends since 2011, an old YouTube friend who wanted to join this podcast, but he has things to do. So unfortunately, he won't be able to make it. Unfortunately. And the other one of my friends is Hubert. He's my childhood friend. He wanted to come, but unfortunately, something came up. So it's only you guys. Yeah, it's unfortunate.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hopefully they'll get to make it next time now.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Be nice to meet them.
And then I would like all of you to introduce yourself first.
I'll go last.
Okay, I'll go first. Hi guys, I'm Shadow Blazer 13. I host the multi tournaments for our group here. We do Strive, Aquaplaza, Nitro Plus, and a bunch of retro stuff. So it's nice to be back doing a podcast. Thank you, Kanda, for inviting me as always, and I'm looking forward to what we're talking about. So yeah, it should be a good podcast.
Hello, people of the internet. It is I, Dumax. And again, I'm using the commentator of like when we do our tournaments with Shadow and Dragon Canada and all that. And again, thank you for inviting me for this topic on this podcast.
That's all. Okay. I'm Le Corbac. Donc, I have a YouTube channel where I'm doing some video games. Mostly French videos, but yeah, I'm doing some Guilty Gear stuff, Genshin Impact stuff, etc. I also have a Twitch account, and yeah, I'm Hardman Canada's friend, and I'm also a VTuber. So yeah.
When you say Twitch account, what do you call this? Twitch account? Twitching like this?
Oh my god! All right, I'm getting now. All right, I'm the last of the story. All right, folks. This is Dragon Wrath, another commentator and co-host with Shadow that helps do the tournaments and whatnot. Got my throat. So when I'm here and he invited me to the podcast as well, which I'm really looking forward to as well, because I mean, heck, given the subject we're talking about today, I was around when video games became a thing, so this ought to be real fun because I can relate. So, and I've grown up playing a lot of games. I have to admit, it really is a good subject because I mean, heck, compared to what we had back when games first started, compared to now, the graphic jumps and the differences of how far it's came is like, if you really think about it, man, there's a lot to talk about. So, but yeah, I'm glad to be here. Looking forward to it.
So I guess everyone did their intro right.
Yep.
Yeah,
I said I would go last. So yep, that's all.
Yeah. So they're going to be. So the podcast will be divided in 5 main subjects. The first one will be a quick history of each video game generation. I'm going to speak while sharing my screen, and I will try to do it in 5 minutes. And then at the end of each generation, I will let you guys do a comment. And like I said, this is unscripted, so we don't know what to expect. There might be another double KO.
Oh my god, you are never going to let that go.
Subject 2 will be, what is the biggest generation leap in your opinion and why? Subject 3, what is the least impressive generation leap in your opinion and why? Subject 4, do you will think we will ever break the graphic plateau one day? And subject 5, people who grew up in a 7th generation, the PS3, cannot understand how mind-blowing it was to see the graphical jump of the first 7th generation. agree or disagree. So this will be my first main subject. Now, put my glasses on.
First topic is about the generations of every console.
The first topic, I'm going to put my glasses on. By the way, it's not good to hit people with glasses. Do you know why?
No
Because
way.
it can hurt them. That's why.
I'll make sure to not do that. It's good advice, man.
The two of us have glasses and two of us doesn't. Nicole back, me and Citizen Fake, we have glasses. So we have a glasses privilege. Okay. I'm going to share my screen.
I don't have glasses in real life though.
I do. I just don't have them on.
I'm wearing glasses right now.
Okay, so that's
I wear glasses, but most of
my
mine for
screen?
reading sake. Yeah, we see it.
Okay.
Or at least I can see it.
No, I'm going to
Yeah, I
do
can
a
see
quick
it.
video game history. Generation 1, between 1950 and 1975. During this era, video game had a very primitive 2D graphic with very simple game like tic-tac-toe or tennis type game like Pong. Each console can only play built-in games because the concept of interchangeable cartridge wasn't really a concept back then. The term video game did not exist yet. Video game was called by many names like computer game, electronic game, interactive visual game, picture game, TV game, and so on. Because of the limited info of this era, no one can agree on what was the first video game ever made. So, any comment on the first generation?
It was a pretty simplistic generation, obviously, with having like ping pong and tennis type kind of games. It kind of set, I suppose, the foundation for like what video games would become in the future. And I suppose it really kind of introduced like a new entertainment form to the world as well, a new type of media. So it's pretty interesting.
This was pretty much like in its infancy, and again, like 1950s. Like dang, that's something you don't really realize. Like, yeah, most people know like during the 80s with the Nintendo Entertainment System, and like a little bit more experts, like a little bit sometime in the 70s with the Atari, like Atari stuff. But man, the 50s.
Yes, I know.
That's old.
I did the research, and
then
I was surprised and whoa, how old video games are, because basically the first video game came up basically with the first computer, basically. So I was surprised.
Pretty much, yeah. When you think about it, it's also like the first like computer too.
Yeah.
Like in the one image, there like a computer tennis console, like 1959.
Yeah.
Imagine that. 1959. Imagine that.
Back then the only kind of games
about
that
like
really
the 60s and gaming was a thing in that time era.
Yeah.
Most games. Wild.
Yeah, most games back then pretty much on computers.
Yeah, I remember back then it was really fun.
I'm
not that old. I don't think you were alive back then, man.
I'm not that old. But yeah, it was pretty innovating back then, and I know that Pong is really the first one to be like a family thing. It was really the first one who came into families with Odyssey and other Pong clones.
Yeah.
And even today, people remember Pong. They don't remember like tic-tac-toe or the tennis game, but Pong stayed the
Right.
the big machine.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a
Wow.
big
Yeah.
machine for just a game of tic-tac-toe. But
So,
Yeah.
but so-
And
that's
also
a-
the
that was a big
tic-tac-toe
innovation
game.
of like entertainment and all that. Of
I
like, that was
remember.
that's a big thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember that the tic-tac-toe game, you couldn't win the game against the computer because he knew how to win every time.
Yeah.
So the best you
Why?
could do against it was a tie.
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah, because the way tic-tac-toe has always been played, it's like, as long as people know what you're going to do, whether it be a computer or a person, which is kind of easy to do and to anticipate, yeah, there was no way to win that for anybody. It was more of a just a screw around and just screw. It was more like just you're basically just scribbling on a board.
Yeah. And that was true. And that was true. That was true. If you put a tic-tac-toe at max difficulty, it's called impossible tic-tac-toe because if you do something, the machine calculated every possibility, so it knew what was your best outcome. So yeah.
Yeah. So I had to say
I
nope.
won impossible tic-tac-toe once. You know what I did? I rage quit.
Yeah, I can imagine you doing that. That'd be about the only thing that would make you do that. But yeah, I mean, heck, I wasn't necessarily born around that time either. But like, even I remember my childhood days. Even I can remember, my dad and them, like, we had at least basic computers and stuff back then and whatnot, and we played games like that, and that was our only form of entertainment back then in my childhood. And not too long after that is when next generation started coming in, which, my God, that's what started me on games. But yeah, I never, well, I may not have been born around that time, but
Neither of us have, but
I-
still,
yeah,
that's still
but I can still remember it because I've had a lot of experience in it. Because I mean, like even he says, from when Gen 2 started, technically, I mean, I still was old enough by then, and whereas like my folks had ways to play all those old stuff, play the really old style, just ping pong and stuff. So I got to know what it was like because they had the equipment to show me it back then. Because my dad was a big computer person.
and at that generation, basically it was friends like the Atari 2600 that kind of like
Yeah.
what was like the most popular of that generation, essentially.
Yeah, because the toy was basically
arcade and all that, but yeah, I think that's
Yeah,
it for
because, like,
it's on
one.
generation
Unless anyone else has.
But
Yeah,
you're
like
kind of right. Oh, hey, Doom, you are genius because I'm about to talk about something. You read my mind. Yes, I want to
Really?
understand why you are genius. You said exactly what I was talking about.
Really?
Yes. What I do, once I read the history of Gen 2, you will understand why you are genius.
okay.
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 So I'm going to do I'm going to do a Gen 2 history. You all ready?
Ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Before I start, one thing I noticed in Gen 1, it's like every pixel ever made a tennis clone. It's like the only video game everyone can think of. Why?
yeah.
Tennis?
Simple.
It-
I mean, look at Pong.
it
It's
was-
just a dotted line, one dot, and two full lines. That's it.
yeah, it was
It was
just,
the most simplest one to make.
Pong.
Mm.
yeah, it was
Because
just a simple-
basically this was the kind of game that was easy to code comparing to what we have now.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what I was
Yeah,
saying.
it's,
It was like the easiest thing to kind
Ultra
of
simple
up.
complex concept. To,
yeah, the technology back then could only do about that much, and that
Yeah.
was it. Like that's all the
Yeah,
tech was
with-
able to do back then. That's the
Yeah,
most they
what
could do with
power
it.
was available at that time. So yeah, that is another aspect. So basically, what was kind of nothing of like on Pong was probably very advanced at its time. So
or
yeah,
maybe
that's
they
what-
liked tennis too much.
Or
Yeah,
that, yeah.
pretty much.
That was probably
They
it,
were just like tennis fans everywhere.
yeah.
So
Pretty much.
onward to Gen 2.
Yes, I love this. It's non-scripted. Everyone making comment. It's natural. I love this podcast. Now, Gen 2. Doing this.
This is where I'm going to be able to relate.
Gen 2, 1975. During this era, it became a norm for video game consoles to be capable of having interchangeable cartridge. The graphic was still primitive, but it was a huge improvement in terms of video game distribution.
Oh, yes, it was.
The Atari 2600 was so popular that it achieved a legendary status that many people think it's the first video game ever made. And Doom, you just prove what I'm saying. You thought Atari was the first gen, but it's the second gen. You just prove my point. Doom, you're a genius. You prove my point.
As in, like, everyone assumes Atari is like the first real kind of gen and like coming of video games, but it's actually not. It's the second.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those weird things where it's in the middle. It's kind of in the middle. I mean, it is in a way, but then at the same time, it's not. It just depends on how you look at it. It's kind of within the weird grayish middle. But yeah, technically, yeah, it's all that. There's when the game started becoming a real freaking like big thing.
More mainstream, well, not quite mainstream yet, but like still like talked about now and more kind of out in the market and everything.
Yeah, like it's starting to get prominence.
This is when the era started of it actually becoming a
and I didn't know the Atari 2600 and its event like other like versions of it was a Gen 2. So you're welcome, Canada.
And what is fun is that when people are talking about the Atari 2600, is that they call it the Atari.
Yeah.
But Atari is actually a company who has a lot of different consoles. But when they are talking about the Atari, they are talking about this one especially.
System, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the Nintendo. The Nintendo.
That's why.
They are talking about the NES.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a little sorry to kind of hold on your documentary of like the second gen Canada, but for the Atari, there were pretty much like three versions of it. The Atari 2600, and then like the Atari 5400, I believe it was, and then like the 78 and like the 7800 one. I'm not quite sure like the other two numbers, but it was like something around there.
Yeah.
But it just worked the same way as every other Atari 2600.
Pretty much, yeah.
Atari was the first backward compatible video game. Think about it.
Yeah.
That is true. In the 80s, that's actually kind of a thing. Now it's a bit more mainstream nowadays, but in that time, like only Atari did that.
Yeah.
So continue, Canada.
Yeah, I'm continuing.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry about that. Continue.
Yeah, that's good. And then, popular Nintendo game like Mario Bros. And Donkey Kong started on the Atari 2600. Pac-Man was the first video game mascot that was created in this era.
Oh God, yes.
Pac-Man is one of the most important games of all time because of the influence it had. In this era, video game regulation was not strict, and the market was filled with too many low-quality video games across 20 different video game consoles on the market that led to the video game crash of 1983.
Yeah,
Back then it was like 20 different video game consoles. Those are only the few of them. That's insane to think about it now.
But when you really kind of think about it from like the public mass at the time, it was pretty much like the Atari games that basically had the spearhold of all like the gaming. And when you had like the quality of everything, when you had like the quality of like all like the games of everything, and like probably like E.T. the extraterrestrial movie game and Pac-Man and everything. Like it was like good and everything, and that kind of like really ruined a lot of people like their interest in gaming, and that would cause kind of like the crash of 1983. And had it not been for Nintendo, pretty much a year later releasing the the Famicom Nintendo system and the / Nintendo Entertainment System, that gaming basically came to what it is now, almost 30 years later. Or
In
not
a
the-
way, it helped its resurgence in a way, if you think about it. Like, it really helped kind of bring life back into kind of the video game market in a sense.
Mhm.
Oh yeah.
After the crash.
Yeah, like look at the images on like that the Atari games like that kind of that's up there with like Donkey Kong and Asteroids and Space Invaders. Like look at the quality of those and like try to compare that to like the like for Donkey Kong specifically the original of the original arcade version. Like compare like to those two. Like it just looks so ugly. Don't know what
Well,
else to
it just
say,
looks-
but it's just so ugly and all that.
Well, I mean, I don't want to say ugly, more like just very janky, but I mean, it's like one of those things where it's like you couldn't necessarily not have fun with it. Because when games started coming out at that time, yeah, they weren't necessarily the most graphical, but it's also because despite them not being very graphical for what they were at the time, it's the factor of what helped made them so cool was, and this is my personal opinion of it, at least what attracted me to them so much, was because regardless of the graphics, they just put so much effort into making the gameplay itself and the gimmick of what the game was meant to do, how you played it and whatnot. They put so much effort into that at that time and started putting so much effort into that instead of worrying about the graphics near as much because they knew what they could and couldn't do with it. And got so, and you know, the people became so knowledgeable on what they could do with the tech at the time that they kind of had that sorted down. So it was more of a just trying to find ways to make the game fun from a play style aspect, which in that genre, that's when it got good because they finally came up with so many games and ways to give different styles of games to play that had so many just different innovative ways to play that's why games became a thing and became so much fun. At least to me, like that's what made them fun because they started coming with so many different genres that you could do of games where it's just you had options, you had ways to keep yourself entertained.
Sports games, the like space shooter games and all that. But again, there were like the Atari 2600. Like it was not quite the most powerful console at its time, even though it was like the most like accessible to everything before the game crash and kind of what caused it. I mean, with like ET, like that actually got rushed. That ET game that got rushed and only had I think like 2 developers like working on it, and that's sort of like what kind of was like kind of the tipping point of it leading of the whole gaming crash of '83 and all that.
Yeah, but I think the success of the Atari 2600 is because for the first time you could have access to games that were arcade-only games at first. And this was the very first console where you could play arcade games at home. It was not as great as the arcade machines, but they were good enough to play as if you were in an arcade room. So yeah, I think it was great to see those games like Donkey Kong, Pac-Man, etc.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, heck, my mom loved people in my family. Like my mom, she loved the Pac-Man, Dr. Mario. She loved Centipede. She loved that stuff to high hell. Like, I mean, my mom loved those games. I almost any day of the week I could walk in the living room and see her playing those. Like she played them almost all the time, at least once a day. Like even my mom, who's not a gamer, even she found joy in that. Even adults were able. There was even games for adults that could be able to sit down and find some joy in it and just be able to sit down and relax too. Which is what helped that it kicked off even more because it even got to the point where even adults were finding ways to enjoy it and could sit there and say, okay, yeah, this is fun.
Okay, now I'm going to start the history of Generation 3.
The 16-bit era.
Yeah.
God, I remember my first Sega Nintendo. My God, I played the Super Nintendo. I played the Super Nintendo in my childhood so much. I played so many Super Nintendo games. And Nintendo
The third
specifically.
generation had a more advanced 2D graphic than the previous generation. Graphic had more colors, and most games had music, which became the norm for video game. Think about it. Most music became the norm in the first generation. The third generation is when video game regulation started to be the norm to avoid another video game crash. Nintendo and Sega put the seal of quality in officially licensed games on their consoles. In theory, and I mean in theory, those games are high quality. And let's say in theory, each game would have Nintendo seal of quality or Sega seal of quality are high quality.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That was
But-
sort of like
we all know why there was a Nintendo seal of quality. It was just for
it was
money.
something of like kind of like the quality of the game and making sure it was not like some like pirated bootleg game.
Yeah, like it actually like
I think
it,
maybe this, but
up to
I
a
think
standard. Yeah.
So
Nintendo has so many bad games I played. What was the game? Ninja Turtles. That was awful. There was a Karate Kid game. Back to the
Oh,
Future.
yeah.
I think of a lot of game that is quite awful. And you think,
Now, see, hold on. I have to say, when it comes to Ninja Turtles, hey, now, the very first Ninja Turtle one was not that bad. The only thing I'll admit that made that bad to me, what was so bad about that one, because I had that one for that time. The only thing that was so bad about the Ninja Turtle ones, the first few original ones they came out with for the first few, was just that it was so damn difficult that it was just, it was unnecessary. It was too freaking hard for that era. Like, it did not need to be that. Yeah, like if it wasn't for that, they weren't so
I'm
bad.
talking
But
about the same game because I know there's a lot of Ninja Turtles game, but I'm talking about the one. I'm talking about the one where there was an underwater level, and then there was
but that's like I said. Yes, that's the very first one. Yeah, but that's within the very first. That was kind of the first gen era ones. That was kind of within the first ones. I know what you're talking about because that's how the very first Ninja Turtles ever one was. You walked around through the city, what looked like a city port, but you were small and you had to go through like different warehouses and stuff. But then you had water levels where you had to go through the sewers, which would make you into a water level terrain, which had a bunch of stupid spikes, zappers, and all this bullshit that could kill you over the slightest touch. And it was just so too hard for its own good.
And
that game was so bad.
This was pretty much the 8-bit game with like with a Nintendo Entertainment System and all that. I'm sorry to get that confused a little bit for might be anyone that's watching this. I got a little bit confused because of how you got this all set up. Kind of, it's a little bit confusing a little bit.
Yeah.
But
I pretty much get it. Yeah, I mean, I pretty much get it, but yeah, no, because I get what you mean.
We're right now on the 8 or Gen 3 with the 8-bit. Or are we on
I know, but that's what I'm saying. Like during my time, because like before 4Gen came about, like the first Ninja Turtles, I had the very first ones. Like I had the actual like first original Ninja Turtles games they ever made for the first like 2 or 3 sets of them. Like I had them, and yeah, those. Because I mean, technically, the gameplay wasn't bad, and it was fun in a way. It's just what made it so bad to me, at least, was just that it was too hard.
Well, in my case, I had the game and I had a good time with Ninja Turtles game.
I never played it, so I am the outsider here.
Yeah, see, so did I, except for the water levels. That's why I agree with Ken.
And at the time, I didn't.
Just the water levels.
Yeah, at the time in France, we didn't have the Ninja Turtles show at the TV yet. So it's the first time I actually played with Ninja Turtles.
Well, nice.
Yeah,
that's kind of cool, actually.
Yeah. Because I know what you're talking about Canada. I do know what you're talking about. It's just
that was successor to Teenage Hero Turtles or something like that. That I heard about.
Oh, I think I know which one. Oh, right. Okay, yeah, that one still had water levels and stuff too, like the older ones. But those were still. That's when they started getting a little more easier to actually beat. The very first original ones, though. Oh God, no. No. Too hard.
I think they called
way too hard.
Hero Turtles instead of Ninja Turtles because of censoring the word ninja because it was too violent for us.
Yeah, I think that was a thing back then. That's why it was called that. Yeah, I think there was a thing around that. I never got to play that one specifically. At least I don't think I did. But even if I did, that one I still enjoyed a fair bit. But I'll agree with Canada. Like there were things about it that made it just it needed some work. There were things about it that made it kind of a very game. It wasn't that good. They had the right idea somewhat, but no, just no. I'd much rather play the other ones despite its difficulty.
Okay. Now.
Oh, and
now-
also we had the first handheld consoles too. Like there was Mr. Game and Watch before, but we started to see
Game and
some
Watch, nice.
handheld consoles like the Game
was-
Gear.
Yeah, but though the Nintendo Game and Watch, that started like in the 80s, like around like 1980, along with Pac-Man actually, and
Yeah.
it wasn't until like kind of a little over a decade that then Nintendo released the first they kind of released like the
Game
handheld
Boy.
Game Boy, yeah.
Yeah. Which I think is really fixing to come up on because I think that was the time when the Game Boys and stuff came into play, I think.
And it was pretty much a handheld 8-bit console.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Hmm.
And the Sega Game Gear, that was also kind of like an 8-bit, also like an 8-bit,
Master System.
yeah, Master System, yeah. But with the Game Gear, it had like color and a backlight in it. The original Game Boy, now I'm thinking about it, it might be a bit more like a 6-bit game sort of, and that did not have a backlight. It was just
Yeah.
a white brick. Yeah, there you go. There's the comparison.
Yeah, oh, there it is. Yeah. Oh, yes.
Hmm.
They both
Yeah.
good, but they are both in
There we
bad
go.
condition because they are 30 years old. So
Yeah, crazy.
All their own fairness.
Yeah, I
that-
remember the
those
Game
are
Gear
all-
a lot because it was literally my first console that I owned, and it used 6 batteries to play for like 45 minutes.
Yeah.
So you had to you really had to
The destroyer
to
of
plug
Batteries.
the consumer of batteries.
yeah.
Yeah, pretty
You
much.
really had to plug the console to not use batteries because it was really too expensive to play on batteries with the Game Gear.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
no
shit,
joke. I
man.
mean, even for the standard Game Boy, because that was the one I had to play between the two, was the standard Game Boy. Even that one, oh god, I mean, thank goodness that one didn't consume the batteries near as much because you also didn't have to use as many. But like, I mean, my god, you got maybe like 5 hours you could play, and then you had to change batteries.
It was still better than Game Gear.
Yeah.
Game Gear, it was
No,
like
no,
1
no,
hour
yeah.
at best. 1 hour at
Yeah.
best
If
with
you were
6
lucky.
batteries.
If you were
Yeah,
lucky.
that's pretty bad.
But we're not talking about handhelds. We're talking about home consoles.
It's in Neo Geo. It's in color, and I use 2 AA batteries, and it lasts for 50 hours. I tested it.
That
The most
really that thing,
portable console. It's old, but
I've never seen that one before. What kind of
Is that a
I've
Game
never
Boy?
seen that
The
sound
new-
before.
that's the Neo Geo Pocket.
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Neo Geo. Yeah. I know
Yeah,
that one.
and
yeah.
it was basically like SNK's like handheld console. Their first handheld
Oh,
console, I believe it was. And
oh.
some of the and actually the game that Canada has in there is Sonic Pocket Adventure. Technically the very first, like if you don't count PC games, the very first Sonic game that was not on a Sega console.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, because I do remember. Even I remember that about that Sonic game existing. Yeah, you'd be right about that. Because even I remember about that game existing. I never got to play it, but I know it came out. I know of it.
to kind of bring you the kind of what that game really is. It was basically Sonic 2. It was Sonic 2 stage and gameplay with Sonic 3 music.
Oh,
That was pretty cool. That'd be pretty cool to play, actually. I could get behind that. That'd be pretty cool.
I
could
didn't
get behind that.
even knew this game.
I never had one, but
I didn't knew
Same
this
here.
game actually.
Yeah, this is one of the rarest Sonic game ever. It's one of the rarest.
I can believe it. I can believe it.
I have no doubt about it.
It's another rare one. Like who cares?
yeah, the
I
32
know that one
game, the
too.
32
Yeah,
X
that,
game. Ugh.
I have a friend that has Knuckles Chaotix and also Tales and the Music Maker on Sega Pico.
oh wow.
Oh, I never saw that in real life.
Yeah, my friend has it.
I think I used to had one when I was young. I think.
Oh,
I'm not 100% sure, but it was like a little like the Sega Pico. It was like it was pretty much like for like little kids games.
huh.
Oh yeah, and about the Knuckles Chaotix, my friend found it on yeah, when people sell their thing. I don't know the term in English. And he found it
Yard
for
sale?
The garage sale. Maybe that's what you meant to say. Selling them in a garage sale.
yeah.
Yeah, a
And,
garage sale or a yard sale.
He found
Yeah.
it for free heroes.
Oh,
Donc, so really
Wow.
low price. On box,
wow.
like complete edition. He sold it. He sold it for like 70 heroes.
wow.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
He regretted it to sell it. He wanted for him, but then the next week he found it again for free heroes in a lot in another garage sale.
Wow.
That was
Damn.
absolutely insane. This game is extremely rare, and he found it two
Twice.
of them in 1 week.
Yeah, in 1 week. Wow, that's
He
Damn.
knew the way.
talking about lucky. Jeez.
Yeah.
So we're done
insane.
talking about Gen 3.
Okay, yes. And now I'm ready to talk about Gen 4, the history.
Yeah, we kind of got stuck on that one a bit long.
Yeah, we kind of got
That's
stuck
my
with it
favorite
with
gen
Gen
because
3 and whatnot, but
I
now we're
grew up on Gen 4. Let's see.
Yeah. Well, it's just there was so much to talk about because I mean, Gen 3 really was when a lot about games became such a major thing. So I mean, there's a lot there to talk about. That's when games became such a big thing.
and especially with the state that it was in after Gen 2, with basically almost the death of gaming.
Yeah,
Yeah.
true,
With
actually.
Nintendo kind of making their own console and all that with the Famicom and the Super Nintendo system, or not Super one, the regular Nintendo Entertainment System, that basically
Yeah.
revitalized the gaming industry, video gaming
Pretty much.
industry. Here we are today.
Yeah.
The Gen
Yeah,
3,
pretty much.
you could do a podcast of 5 hours of just Gen 3 alone.
Yeah, you could.
Oh no. Well, yeah, you could do that, but I think Gen 4 is where things got crazy.
Yeah,
well,
Gen 4 is like 2 or 3
Things got
podcasts.
crazy.
Yeah, well,
It's
yeah,
like
we'll let
3
him start it.
podcasts just for Gen 4.
Yeah,
We
we'll let him
should-
start it up to get there. But yes,
Yeah.
let him get us there.
We
But
should
yeah,
try
that-
and like get there, because we could spend every week. We should try and like get through these gens, because we'd be here like all night if we're like
yeah.
talking every single one of them.
Okay.
So,
Now
maybe
I'm
getting
going
kind of
to
with
history
Gen
of
4.
Gen 4 started about in 1989. In Gen 1,
Yeah, now this is when I was.
console used a 16-bit CPU to give a lot of details on 2D graphic. This generation had a huge jump in 2D graphic. It was the perfection of 2D games.
Yeah,
And it was even capable of very primitive 3D games like Star Fox on the Super Nintendo and Virtual Racing on the Sega Genesis.
I had
Yeah.
these 2 games.
But those games
And I was
wasn't the norm in the generation. Well-made 2D graphic of the 4th gen game aged very well, and it's even considered beautiful even today.
Yep.
So
As a
now,
person who
Yeah.
was born in
comment on Gen
1987.
4? No?
Pardon?
Gen
No.
4 is where things really took over, especially with pretty much of when basically the first war of gaming begun with Nintendo and Sega.
Yep. Because
Yeah,
I was
when the
born in
competition
1987.
really
With
kind of
those two, like,
started, yeah.
challenging. Yeah. Even though Sega started the fourth gen with the Sega Mega Drive, and that's where like everywhere else called it. Here in the US, it was the Genesis. It wasn't until 2 years later that the Nintendo brought their 16 console, the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, and that was where the war begun.
Yeah.
And
Because as a person, keep going.
and basically we have like a bunch of like the games from those two consoles, including of like some like that Neo Geo there, and like the Turbo Graphics game. And one thing I will also mention, during this generation there was a console called the 3DO, which pretty much which was a console which was, I guess, the very first home console that utilized like 3D images and like 3D graphics a little bit, but that thing was so expensive. Like at that time, it was like something like $500 at that time, or $700. It was ridiculous. So no one talks about it. So at least I threw that as a little mention. But the one that everyone knows, the Sega Genesis and Super
Nintendo and stuff.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we had
that was pretty much where gaming really took off, and pretty much the rivalry and war with pretty much Nintendo and Sega started, because and even like with like in a graphics standpoint, like if you stay on that, go back up, Canada, on that one page, like if you look at like Sonic 3 and compare it to 8-bit Sonic over there, you can tell there's like a big difference from like the Master System to the Sega Mega Drive and the Genesis. Like you can tell like the difference between of how big the went up.
It got more realistic. Yeah, they helped manage to make it a little more realistic, but you could actually
more detailed of the level layout, and even like some character, and even like the character models and all that.
Yeah, there were new techniques of rendering, like scrolling parallax. The 3D, the 3D with like Star Fox. It was primitive, but it was already there. Virtual racing. It's like there's so much new rendering techniques for these games that we saw games that we couldn't see before. And it's absolutely insane. The evolution between Gen 3 and Gen 4.
Yeah, and speaking of the Virtual Racer and Star Fox game, they both actually have like a special graphics engine in it that kind of made like a bunch like polygons actually work of like the Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo. Yeah, with Sega, they had I'm not quite sure of like the graphics engine it used for Virtual Racer, which I think it was the same as like the arcade. It's like MA2 engine or something like that. I'm not 100% sure. But with Star Fox, the graphics engine in that, to make it 3D, it was called the Super FX chip. And
that one had its own
basically the R-Wing and like everything looked 3D like.
They created it especially for Star Fox.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one had its own unique setting to it. Star Fox was this one kind, it had its own just one of a kind graphics for it at the time. Nothing.
There's also Doom on SNES. The Doom game. It was extremely impressive to see Doom on SNES.
I thought you're calling Doom our friend, but
Doom
the game.
The shooter game, yeah.
Though that did start. Though that wasn't like in the mid '90s when Doom came out. Or am I thinking of a
Yeah,
different?
Doom was the original Doom game, like when the first Doom game was ever made, that was kind of back when it was still more of a strict
1993, if I remember.
Yeah.
I think
And they
that
have
was
one
during
for the Super
Nintendo or
Nintendo version.
Super Ages, I think. Yeah, that wasn't. I think that came out before Star Fox and stuff. I think the first Doom ever came out was a little bit before Star Fox and the other games started coming out. I
Mhm.
think.
But
But yeah,
again,
as a
the fourth gen with 16-bit and everything, like it was still impressive. Like I mean, look at the Mega Man X3 game. Like look how colorful
Yeah, it's
it
really
looks
nice.
compared to
Yeah,
like the 8-bit Mega Man and all that. Like that
yeah,
that
because
is,
I mean,
that is such like a noticeable difference of
oh
it.
yeah, it's a huge difference. I mean, as a
Crazy.
person who grew up playing all that and was born in 1987 and got to grow up playing before X and M started coming out and got to play a lot of those games before. Because as a person who like played Mario Bros. 3, played the Mega Man series and started with 2 back on the Nintendo and started with 2 and started playing all of them before the X one came out. Played all those games that's on there. Like the amount of graphical difference they had by the time Mega Man X and all those other games started coming out, the graphics were that is such a dramatic jump. It's not even funny. Like it's absurd how crazy they got it to or graphic wise and how
Yeah,
far
from
technology
8
came and
to
stuff
16.
with those games at that point. Like it was a immense fucking groundbreaking thing at the time. It really is. Even to this day, still.
Fast
That's
processing and
crazy
everything.
how that's crazy how they went from being had to go so low bit graded graphics and to what is that? Like that is insane. And I'm like Canada here, like at least when especially when it comes to games like Star Fox and Mega Man. Hell, for Nintendo and stuff, Mega Man was one of my favorite genres. Like I grew up loving that game. That was one of my favorite games to play for that. So when that came out and I started playing my very first ever Mega Man X game, oh my God, I was so elated and so psyched and was just found playing it so freaking cool and fun because of how much they upped the graphics and everything they did to it. It made my day. Like I had so much fun because of that.
Some people may even consider that video games really started with this gen.
Yeah, no joke. It really did. Like it really did. Because by this point, they definitely had the graphics down to where they could come up with so many style of games and give all of it its own unique graphical spin in every way and have every single game have just its own unique way of playing and details to it.
Of the characters and the stage, everything.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it's just insane how much they got games to be able to. All games at that point started really being able to have their own literal specific graphic way of playing. They had their own
art and like
about
idea and everything.
Yeah,
So,
it's crazy.
So that was the fourth gen.
Yeah, I played a lot of my growing up years was the fourth gen, and that was when I can definitely say that was the best time. That's what really got me into enjoying games was during that gen because I grew up on the age of most of playing those, and that got me into video games so damn much. It's not even funny.
And my favorite video game is Final Fantasy 6 or 3 in US. That is on SNES, so yeah, Gen 4.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's a good pick.
Yeah, the Final Fantasy 6. Yeah, that's a pretty good one. I ain't gonna lie.
That's a good one, yeah.
Yeah. Little off topic. Square Enix, they actually released a pixel remaster of that game, and like
they have, yeah.
the other 5
I
games.
saw that on YouTube recently. Yeah, they did that. But what's bad is I think it's only for PC though. I think they only did that like.
Oh, it's
a
on
certain-
consoles too.
No, it's consoles.
Oh, did they? I'll have
Yep.
to look into that. I'll have to look into that for my PS4 and 3. I'll have to look into that then.
Okay, so
But
with
yeah.
that now a little out of the way and all that, that was Gen 4.
Okay.
Yeah, one of the most greatest times for games.
Yeah, before I start the issue of Gen 5, I want to say a comment about Gen 4. You know, the SNK Neo Geo, this is the strangest console ever because during the Gen 4, the TurboGrafx, the Sega Mega Drive, Genesis, and the Super Nintendo, they all cost about $150.
At the time.
At the time, it cost. I remember it cost over 1,000 Canadian dollars. Over 1,000.
Right.
That's in
And
Canadian
then
money.
it's still
For the record. That's in
relevant
Canadian.
in the market.
What?
It's still
At the
relevant
time.
in the market, and then it created its own market, and it was considered a console for rich people, but logically it should have failed because it was so expensive. Because the Neo Geo was as strong on the arcade machine at home, and each game was a huge block. Each game was $200-300 each or something like that.
Inflation,
That
wow.
console should have failed,
You couldn't
but-
catch me doing that.
but it was a success by some freak of nature. So I think it's the only console in history. It should have failed, but the Neo Geo was a
Well, see-
success. I
Well,
don't know
see,
how
well,
they
to me
did it,
though, I
but-
mean, don't you know, I can see why I succeeded, but I'll agree that the amount of money they wanted for that, yeah, only
Yeah.
rich people. My God, there's
Mhm.
no
Because
way in
Same thing
hell.
with
There was
same thing with the 3DO.
like the 3DO,
Oh,
the
there
3DO, expensive, it failed. But I must say, I played some video game, and most video game was bad, but SNK game was high quality.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, it's great.
The fighting games,
That's
Metal
probably why
Slug,
so expensive.
Weird
all the
console.
Metal Slug and fighting games, Garou, King of Fighters,
Samurai
Uh,
Shodown.
Yeah.
Samurai,
I know about
Samurai, the Samurai games.
Yeah, I know about some of those games. Yeah, that'd be the reason why that was popular, I'm sure. Yeah.
Mhm.
One fun anecdote. At that time, I remember the conversation I had with my parents. I wanted my father to buy me a video game console, and then I used a negotiation technique. I said, "Father, can you buy me the Neo Geo? How much is it, Patrick? It's over $1,000." I said, "Are you serious? No way! I'm not buying you that." Okay, you understand?
Yeah.
Understandable though. Understandable. It's like, okay, I just feel like I asked to focus it. Yeah, but that's understandable. I can understand why. Yeah,
Now for
geez,
the
I can understand why.
history
I
of
had that
Pen
response.
Ah, my
So-
turn.
Now
Nice.
the-
Here we finally.
Mhm.
During the 5th generation, the CPU of console became strong enough to process 3D graphic naturally at a good frame rate. 3D game became the norm, but 2D games still existed, like some Street Fighter and Mega Man game. The 5th generation 3D graphic was more advanced than the 4th generation one. This generation
yeah.
is where a lot of game franchise had a transition into 3D, making it possible to play games in new way, like survival horror game like Resident Evil became possible. And also, first-person shooter became popular, like GoldenEye 007.
Mm-hmm.
Wow,
Yeah.
yeah, true.
Yeah.
Duke
Mario
Nukem,
64.
Medal of
true.
Honor, an
Driver.
open world game like Driver became possible, and exploration 3D platformer like Ape Escape and Mario 64 became possible. Voice acting in video game also became possible thanks to higher quality audio. Unfortunately, the 3D graphic of the 15th gen did not age well because it's considered low polygon in today's standard, and it's considered ugly in today's standard. So
I will disagree. Sorry, I want to interject.
It
real
depends of
quickly.
the games.
I
Well,
will
yeah,
disagree with that.
Yeah, well, and plus,
okay. So do you have any comment on the 5th gen?
Yeah, plus-
Well,
plus Shadow, you gotta remember he's reading from what was kind of a document of what people thought.
I know.
not that-
No, I know.
Yeah,
I know. But I'm
This is-
just interjecting. Anyway, I'm just saying generally from the documents standpoint. I just think, and from like how it was perceived, I think that's wrong. I actually think the
Yeah,
style
no,
is
I-
pretty
I-
nice at the time. But
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, I feel like people took that way too much for granted, and that's where people, unfortunately, started to getting too picky and
Yeah.
really just kind of bought, looked down on games in a way that was kind of uncalled for, because I mean, compared to then, again, they made a graphical leap from then, if you consider, like the one he had up there for Mega Man 8, like, it's Mega Man 8, granted it's a one before X, but I mean, you take like the one he has up there for Mega Man 8, for example, because of like look at that, like compared to how the Mega Man games, at least the regular ones, not X. But I mean, that's a huge difference for the Mega Man games. On by 8 standard, that's a huge freaking difference. Like that's not
2D graphic.
It looks smoother and more fleshed out with some of the colors, but that's about it.
Yeah, but it still looks cool though in its own way. Like it's the factor of how it's like the detail to it has helped made it like look like it's its own thing in a way. Which for most games like that, that's the thing about that era. Like they took games like that, and I mean, yeah, they didn't necessarily change a lot with it, but it still was cool, and they managed to make it its own unique thing in a way and made it fun. And why, like he said, that why those games became possible, because it gave them another inverted way to take some of the games that existed and or even create new games off of that, and then add new ones, and or even take some of the existing ones and just give them a whole new style to play yet again, because they had gotten away to mess with the styles again, but in a more detailed fashion. So despite what people wanted to bitch and moan about, technically, yeah, things got like they made an advancement again.
Now it is also possible because this, correct me if I'm wrong, but this was the first generation with 3D elements and 3D graphics. So maybe some companies and publishers were still learning how to do 3D. So maybe that's why some of like the quality of the assets might not have been as high, for example, with Mega Man, for example. But I still think it holds up pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. Yeah, I mean, I'll read those documents
because here's the thing you got to realize, because you're pretty much working, because before you basically just had pretty much a flat piece of paper, put like the decorations on it, and have the character moving. Think of it like that in that sort of way. Now when you're going to 3D, now you gotta like have pretty much this sort of like this own big sort of like an open like world of sorts. And not only you have pretty much the Y and Z axis, now you got the X axis for like kind of like depth perception and everything. And that's why like some games with some like kind of more like the 3D platformer games like Super Mario 64 and Ape Escape and Crash Bandicoot, with like their camera system of like how the camera worked on that. Even like Resident Evil, about how in that one, it basically like whenever you move to a room, it will switch to sort of like a security eye camera like perspective of like it will have like
Resident Evil,
and for like 2D, I mean, it's the same thing. Yeah, there's like Resident Evil with there. And like even like for 2D fighting games, like it was sort of the same thing with like 3D platforms and everything I just said. And also one thing that did also was noticeable was also racing games like Driver, Gran Turismo, Mario Kart, and all those sorts of racing games. And sure, there were some 2D games to try to complement with like the more powerful engine and give it a bit more leeway of sorts. Though a bunch of like other like series from like the 16-bit era, it was sort of like a do or die sort of thing of jumping into the next dimension, and a lot of games did not survive from the transition, like Bubsy.
They just kind of
and some other ones too.
Yeah, because like don't get me wrong, I mean, I would definitely say like in that picture you got with that one fighter game that's below that, like with games like that, I mean, I get why some people considered it where they might have like didn't get any better. If anything, they got worse, and why it kind of fell off to some degree, and why some people felt like that was an era that kind of hit somewhat of a bottom. Because depending on your games and what games you played at that time, for putting those kind of graphics and styles on some of them, it worked really well. And then I mean, some not so much. I mean, I won't disagree with that at all, because some of it did look sloppy a bit, but like I would still say that I agree with Shao that I feel like it's like, despite that though, it's one of those things where it's like, I feel like if anything, the only reason why people felt that way at that time and they took it that way was because they were getting too greedy and just more of a problem of just people being too nitpicky about it. Like, I mean, good grief, it's not some of those games at that time. Yeah, I mean, the transitions didn't work out well, but was it really a bad game overall? No, you just had to get used to dealing with the graphics. It wasn't that bad.
Yeah, and here's the thing, and here's another thing.
And
Like-
what can else be respect from? I mean, it was a new territory for them. They were trying what they could. It was a new territory.
That's what I was
Of
about
course
to
it's gonna
say.
have its botches.
That's what I was about to say. It was pretty much like new territory for like Nintendo, Sony, Sega, and all that, of like working the 3D aspect, and like some companies, some of them kind of stuck with like the 2D sprite aspect of it, and other times they did went full 3D. And
Yeah,
like,
or they did a bit of both.
well, 3D, and other times like they did went the 3D route, but to be safe, they kind of gave like a pretty much how you progress the game. It was in a 2D perspective of like essentially 2.5D when you think about it. Like one good
Kind of in
example is
between.
like, well, huh?
Kind of like in between, where they did a little bit of 3D and they
Where
did
it was
some
like-
3D elements in there. But
Yeah,
not full-blown.
a good example is a game called Klonoa.
Oh yeah.
Klonoa. Wow, yeah.
Like that example, because that whole game, that was like all the characters and everything, they were 2D, but the stage itself, it was 3D. And
Yeah.
and
Yeah, I
another one
think I know
is
what
Kirby
that is.
64, where everything was 3D, but how you progressed, it was 2D. But there were some cases where the camera, where Kirby would like make like a curve, do have like maybe like the camera shift, kind of camera moving a little bit and all that. So yeah.
Oh yeah, and
Yeah.
one thing about Klonoa is that I played the PS1 version of Klonoa like maybe 6 or 7 years ago, so not at the time.
Mhm.
And this is legit the first video game that made me cry. Yeah, like
Yeah.
no other games made me cry, and it was a PlayStation 1 game. So yeah, you could you could make great games on PlayStation 1 despite the low polygons thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
mean, it's
yeah. Despite the
more-
quality, it's the effort they put into the games that you could tell that they did is what made them good.
Mhm.
You just had to be open-minded, which some people at that time kind of got bad at being open-minded. So, yeah,
In my case, this generation was the generation where I didn't have all those consoles. I only had a Super NES.
Oh,
So
I had,
it was the time where I was on my I was at I was with my friends, and I watched my friends play those consoles, and I was only watching. So I wanted a PlayStation 1, etc., but I didn't have those consoles. So yeah.
I only got to keep a hold of the PlayStation 1, and for me, I think it was, what was it back then? I think out of all the systems, by the time the PlayStation 1 came out, I got to get away with still having a PlayStation 1 and my Super Nintendo working at the time, and or Nintendo for my mom's sakes working to a degree, but it definitely started to have its hiccups and was showing its age. So, but yeah, same. Like, I mean, I got to have a PlayStation 1, but I'll admit I didn't get a chance to really play a lot of games. I know if I compared to other people that told me about the games they played and got to play near as many. Not back then, but I got to have it for a while until things happened.
So on to the 6th gen.
Oh,
The history of the 6th generation.
Yeah, oh boy, the Dreamcast. My brother had that system. That was my brother's system. He had the Dreamcast. I don't know where he got it and how, but he had it.
Just one question. Sega Saturn, 5th gen or 6th gen?
Sega Saturn
Fifth
is
gen.
over here. Sega Saturn is
It's fifth, isn't it?
Yes, it was the 5th gen for the Sega Saturn.
gen.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, the Sega Saturn itself was
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That was
The main 5th gen console. And this is Atari Jaguar I think it was the last Atari console, but Atari Jaguar was not a huge success.
Yeah, no. During that age, it was
It was
mostly
their
the
last
Sega.
home console. I think Atari did came with like a handheld console in the form of it's called the game.com. That was the actual name of the console.
Oh, it was them.
Oh Jesus!
Yeah,
The
I think I
game.com was
do-
them?
I do remember.
Wow.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure Doom's right
In
because
terms
I
of
remember.
Atari's home console, yes, it was the Atari Jaguar.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the game.com is
I-
one of the rarest consoles ever because it failed miserably.
Well, no.
Yeah, I remember.
Well, there is actually one console we should at least mention a little bit, and that's the Nintendo Virtual Boy.
Oh,
Oh yeah.
that one I failed.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
That did not last a long it had like the shortest catalog lineup in the history of like Nintendo and like the gaming industry. Like there was only like 13 games for that console.
Yeah.
What a bust.
Yeah, and there was like I think like only it was either one or two games that was only exclusive in Japan, which here in the West that makes it 11.
Uh-huh.
So it was small for that thing,
Yeah.
but at the same time, that went into controversy of how that thing played with like the red lighting and that it hurt users' eyes.
Well, yeah, I remember.
So inside of it was basically 2D most of the time, or like 2D, and it made it feel like virtual reality and all that. So
Yeah.
at least at least I kind of got like a little bit of my little bone of it of like at least mentioning of like the Nintendo Virtual Boy of sort of like essentially the predecessor of virtual reality today.
Yeah, that's
Mm,
right.
Yeah.
Nintendo was the first one who had the idea, but I think the technology
It was too ahead of its time.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Virtual Boy was way ahead of its time.
Yeah, it was.
Oh yeah. That and it didn't work well at that point. They didn't have the proper tools to really make that thing functionally work in a very good manner. It just really didn't.
Yeah, so the way that thing worked really, like basically like when you looked into it, you were looking at through a mirror, through another mirror, and then like the screens itself of the game. That's how like when you look at the internal sketchings of it, like the internal like sketchings of like how it worked. That's how it worked. Of like basically like the screens was sort of like at the side of your eyes, and it reflected off of two mirrors at each end, and that's how the gameplay would the game screen would look like.
Yeah. But that had a lot of issues
Yeah,
first
with
time. It
hurting
didn't quite
eyes and
it didn't
everything.
quite function well.
So we're now into the
Yeah, it didn't
so
function well.
so with that now a little bit out of the way, now it's to the 6th gen.
Now, this is the history of the 6th gen
Where
console.
things really
The 6th generation,
yeah, there
had
were
a
things
very-
really
the 6th generation started in about 1999. The 6th generation had a very huge jump in 3D graphic. During this era, the 3D
Mhm.
visual was compared to Pixar movie like Toy Story.
That's true.
Yeah,
Oh,
that
yeah.
is true,
The
yeah.
graphic of the 6th gen aged very well. This generation had capabilities of playing online, but it was limited. And and
It was limited on some of those games.
Yeah.
It was sort
Yeah.
of like the first.
There was a lot of
It was kind of like the first step of online gaming, even though Sega sort of did that like way before in like the 4th gen, I believe it was. Maybe in
Yeah,
the
it was more
fifth.
it was more testing ground, I think, for
Yeah,
the,
it was a bit
Sega
more.
did the
It was
Sega
sort of
Channel,
very
the Sega
experimental with
Genesis.
Sega, but in this, like in the 6th gen, it was just about to open up, but it was very, very, very limited. Like
Yeah.
Yeah, they still had that.
Like for example, like for the Nintendo GameCube, like it can do online with like a landline and all that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but I want you, like all of you, to know. Do you know what games really took like landline multiplayer? Like kind of
Melee,
like
maybe? No.
no, not that one.
Fantasy Star Online for the GameCube, I think.
Yeah.
And Halo.
Fantasy Star Online.
And then Street Fighter
Yeah.
Alpha 3 for the Sega Dreamcast. That can play online. I remember it.
Oh, okay.
Street Fighter 3 played online. Okay.
For the Sega Dreamcast version played online, but the PlayStation 1 version had no online. The Dreamcast version played online.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it was
I think
the-
Which
yeah.
Nintendo? Wait, which Nintendo games were online?
The only one that I know of is Kirby Air Ride.
wow, okay.
Right,
Wow.
that the Kirby game. Yeah, I could
Oh,
see
that
why that's
game,
the case
yes.
that
I
happening.
know
Yeah,
that
because
game.
Kirby was a very popular game.
What my knowledge, other than of like that, maybe that Fantasy Star Online game, I'm not 100%
Yeah,
sure
Fantasy
that
Star
had.
Online,
Oh yeah, for GameCube, because that's when, at least for
Online.
GameCube and stuff, it
But
definitely
the
became
other
a thing.
game the other game that I do know that has like basically landline, basically like do like the telephones and all that online, was Kirby Air Ride.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think that was the
Nice.
only
Yeah.
one.
Before that, there was no online features, but online downloadable content on Nintendo 64 with the 64DD.
Yeah,
And
that's
also
Oh, yes,
the
true.
on Super Famicom, you had you could download content too.
True.
yeah.
Huh.
With the
Yeah,
Super,
there was
with the
that,
Super one, that was like the only one.
those were more, though sort of in that time it was a bit more, it was kind of like really unheard of for everyone and also
Yeah.
experimental too. So
True.
so no one really talks about it, even though it's
Oh, yeah,
true
back then.
that those came out first on those systems and all that, but they don't really talk about it because not everyone in the masses had that accessibility of everything.
Or just
But-
give the
but
kids
with-
to use it
but with
because
play-
they enjoyed it for what it was.
Yeah, but with kind of like but with like the Sega Dreamcast, PlayStation 2, and I know especially the Xbox. Now I don't have the Xbox myself, but those had like online features a bit. Not
Yeah,
a
by
lot,
the time-
but it had some online
Xbox had.
PSO really started to make the online feature popular into a larger.
Well, that and
larger-
GameCube. That and GameCube did it. For that era, it was mostly GameCube and Xbox. PlayStation had some here and there as they came out with games. They were
PlayStation
managing to make some that kind of did, but it was mostly GameCube and Xbox that created the online stuff. And I know this only because I had a lot of friends who had GameCube specifically and had a lot of the GameCube games like Fantasy Star and certain things. And I remember seeing a lot of the GameCube games. That's when it started becoming a thing a lot, at least with that one. GameCube had a lot of games that were like that, where they could
I didn't-
actually start doing the online things.
I didn't know that. Other than a Kirby Air Ride, I didn't. Other than Kirby Air Ride, and then of course that Fantasy Star game.
Yeah. Same
That
here.
I never
Yeah.
knew that the GameCube had like other games that was like.
Oh yeah, it was very few in
Online.
between. Yeah, I don't get me wrong. I mean, like
Well,
just
Xbox
like
had because of Halo.
Yeah.
And
Well, yeah.
PlayStation, I think it had. I think like some games that was online.
Yeah, that's some
Yeah.
other games as well, like racing
Yeah,
games.
and
I think,
don't
and stuff.
and don't get me wrong, and that's my biggest point though, is that I'm just saying this, like out of all those systems, I can definitely say GameCube, PlayStation, and Xbox had the most, was with an era of starting to having online games and being able to play with people online, had any remote like happenings, because it took them up until this era before they could start getting any of the tech for that to even be a thing. They didn't have it until then. This was
The
the era
funny
when
thing,
that started really picking up.
the funny thing is that even today, Nintendo is always late about the online features. Like
Yeah.
even the
Yeah.
nowadays consoles
Mhm.
are pretty bad with online. So that's
Yeah,
funny.
that's-
Switch
Nintendo
Online.
kinda-
Switch
Yeah.
Online.
But that's understandable. I mean, I'm not surprised by that though. I mean, Nintendo wasn't the only one that pretty much just shied away and never bothered to do it. These
Yeah,
are the only
Nintendo.
systems
Actually,
ever
I think
bothered to
Nintendo
bother.
just wants to make games. That's all they care. They don't
Yeah, they
care
want
about
make-
the online. They just want to
Yeah,
make
I
games.
don't think. Yeah.
Yeah,
which,
no, they-
that's fine. But
Yeah, I mean, it's fine. Yeah, but PlayStation and these games is when they cared, and that's when it started becoming a thing, which is what helped made this era so much fun because not only the graphics and their different things they could start doing with the tech at that point, but because of the online factor as well.
yeah,
Yeah.
and even
It
like
made a hell of a difference.
yeah, and even like with the graphics of the games and in the 6th gen, like now we got in like all like the polygons like more basically increased even more with like 128 polygons. And also more smoothing textures of everything.
Don't
Yeah.
forget animated cutscenes as well, like Final Fantasy X, like movie cutscenes and things like
Oh no,
that
there
as
were
well.
there were some like kind of like there were
CGI.
like some cutscenes in the previous gen too.
Yeah, a little
Oh
bit.
yeah. It's
It
true.
wasn't
true.
it wasn't
Well-
most of them wasn't in game.
No, but I don't
more
mean
like,
that.
it was
I
like
mean like from a
FM
quality.
It was like,
like,
FM emanations of like it was sort of
FMV, isn't it?
FMV, yes.
Yeah.
FMV.
Yes.
FFD, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, FMV.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They
and
had
while,
it
there,
there.
and while there were some like FMVs in the 6th gen, but most of there was some of it in the 6th gen for mostly like intros of gaming and whatnot. They actually like gaming had like some like more cutscenes that was like more like in-game cutscenes.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
Sonic Adventure and
Yeah.
Metroid.
Sonic, Metroid, a good bit of even Metroid was a drama that had a good bit of that. Metroid's gaming drama was one that started coming up with the cutscenes a good bit too.
Onimusha.
Onimusha, yeah. Oh my god, all of the Onimusha series. Onimusha was such a good game. Yeah, that game was very like
that was amazing.
immersive because that was definitely they made everything about that, like everything that happened in that game from the start of a fight to a finish of a fight. Man, if there was a cutscene involved, man, they did not let that get messed out at all. They capitalized on that shit to high hell, which made it very fun, made it very engaging.
Yeah, actually.
And one thing with the 6th gen is we started to see games that were extremely innovative in terms of rendering. For example, Shenmue. We saw. Shenmue has a pretty innovative system because the meteor and the sun change depending of the day and time where
day
you
and
are.
night cycle.
So you, if you
yes,
stayed
yeah.
like there was a real time system where you could see the sunset if you were late on the day, things like that. You could have a different meteor. So it was extremely innovative with the time. I think it was the only game to do that at the time, but nowadays it's extremely common. Like you can take Genshin Impact, you can take Skyrim, Breath of the Wild, etc. The real-time features are really common nowadays, but back then it was extremely innovative and unfortunately it didn't help the Dreamcast to live longer, but it was actually really impressive at the time.
It was.
Yeah, it's a shame that console did not last a long time.
Yeah,
Like,
no, because
it only lasted like for 5 years or something like that. So like when it was first made or like when it first released and everything to what 5 years in what like 2004 or 5. Like
Dreamcast unfortunately did that last long, which was kind of sad because I mean surprisingly enough, I don't know about anyone else in the world, but personally to me, it's like I said before, like I said earlier at the start of this subject, my brother had the Dreamcast. He had the system. How he got it, I don't freaking know. But my brother had the Dreamcast, and he had a pretty decent handful of games for it. And I'm sorry, but to me, that was a game console generation that I thought was pretty cool and very unique for what it did for its graphics and stuff and the type of games it had for it. I thought it was very cool for the games they did for it. It definitely was not something you saw any other game, the game consoles. Like Dreamcast was its own daggone dimension, but it was cool in my opinion. It was a shame that it didn't last because to me, I felt like it was actually a pretty cool system for its time. It was very neat. Most of the games were very, they were all very different. They had a good variety of different styles of games for it, and it was just overall pretty fun to play. Some of the games, challenging as hell and absolutely frustrating sometimes, but they were still fun. It wasn't a bad console. It really wasn't.
The reason why the reason why the Dreamcast didn't last long is because of the bad decision that Sega did with the Sega 32X 2 generations prior, and then the Sega Saturn that was more expensive than the PlayStation 1. Sega was in debt, so they had financial trouble, so they need to leave the console market to survive. It was their own fault.
Which is understandable.
That was the reason of why Sega don't make consoles anymore, was because of like bad marketing decisions of trying to essentially add like another peripheral for the Sega Genesis after it got the CD with the 32X, and then
they kind of got outdone.
The awful high pricing for the Saturn, and really like the Dreamcast, like it would have worked, but with like kind of the bad decisions Sega did, it was like too little. It was kind of too late to kind of make like some comeback.
Unfortunately,
like thrive a little bit longer in the gaming in the console business.
So they just got too outdone.
Then they became a third party, and thus basically kind of the biggest thing that kind of happened, Sonic and a Nintendo console.
Yes, that was a shock for me.
With Sonic Adventure 2 Battle and Adventure XD, those were kind of the first games that were essentially like ported over to Nintendo consoles and everything else. But the first like brand new Sonic game was Heroes.
Yeah,
and that's pretty much what got them blown out the water, unfortunately, because like if it wasn't for them doing the bad margins and just getting outdone from a business standpoint, I feel like if it wasn't for that console could have went far. They just guys freaking got outdone
from previous generations.
Well, that getting outdone in general by the other companies and just not being able to keep up with the competition, unfortunately. If they were able to, I feel like they could have went far with it.
If there was a modern Sega control, Persona would be exclusive. Shin Megami Tensei would be exclusive to Sega. With Yakuza,
That's true.
Yeah, that's why I said
it's Monkey Ball.
Yeah. That's why, like I said, it's like if they didn't get outdone and everything happened the way it did, they could have went somewhere with that Dreamcast and could have managed something with it, but they
made like whatever version of console they're at now in like some alternate timeline. But in the timeline that we're in now, Sega don't make consoles no more, and the Dreamcast was the last console they made.
Yeah, which is a darn shame because it was, in my personal opinion, I give them props for the last system they were made though, because to me, I thought the Dreamcast was a very good system. I enjoyed it for what it was. I don't think there was anything wrong with it. And anyone who looked down on it, I say on to you, shame on you, because there was nothing wrong with that game console. There was nothing bad about that. Challenging in some of the games a bit boring and maybe niche and not your thing. Okay, I get it. But was it really all that bad, folks? No. Come on now. Like, geez.
Yeah, it's just a shame what happened to Sega with that console.
Yeah, because like give them some credit. Now, come on, that a lot of the games, because like I said, because I'm the one at least got to see most of them. I can at least say I've got to see most of what they did with it in person. Even got to play some of the games thanks to my brother having it. Dude, they did good work with that. I don't care what anyone says. They did good work with that, in my opinion. They deserved more than what they got for that, in my personal opinion. I feel like they should have gotten more out of that than what they got, because that was a cool system, in my opinion. I liked it.
Okay, and then before
I
I
don't
start,
know what it
before I
looks
start
like.
the seventh generation, I said talk to other people. The other people still say that the Sega Dreamcast is in the top 5 best system of all time. And
Oh,
then
same here. I have a friend that's the same. So
Dreamcast guy. Try to guess what his favorite console is.
dream.
A
Yeah.
YouTuber called Dreamcast guy.
I wish I would have
Yes.
played a Dreamcast.
Another YouTuber
Same.
came Adam Koralik. That's
I did found one years ago, but I didn't took it.
Yeah.
Because of my mom.
And then
Yeah, it basically talked me out of like not picking it up like at Goodwill or something.
So there's a lot of Dreamcast YouTuber on YouTube because that's how good that system was. It could have worked if Sega did not make their past mistake. For me, it's a shame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah, they had it. They had it in
It was
their
a good-
hands. They had
a console,
it.
but the past haunted them and ended it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, was just the pass. Not the
Sadly.
console itself, but it was the pass of the company.
Yeah.
So into
Yeah.
the 7th gen.
Oh boy.
About the 7th gen.
Oh
Xbox
boy.
Yeah.
PS3 and the Nintendo Wii.
Oh.
The 7th generation was the transition into high definition with the exception of the Nintendo Wii. In high definition, both 3D and 2D graphics are detailed, not possible during the 6th generation. Because of it, it was possible to make photorealistic game. Online gaming, update, and DLC became the norm in this generation because the high-speed internet became accessible for most people.
Yeah.
Mhm. That's
And
very
let's finish it, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
in this generation, pure gaming corporations like Sega, Atari, and SNK stopped making video game consoles because console development became too expensive. Only multimedia corporations that had infinite amount of money, like Sony and Microsoft, had the money to support consoles with the latest generation technology. Nintendo is the exception and was forced to use a different strategy to stay in the console market without losing money by selling their consoles. Sony and Microsoft sold their console at the last most of the time. So
Yeah.
Now, the reason why the Nintendo Wii did not had HD capabilities like the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 was essentially the insides of the Wii was essentially a GameCube, but it was like basically two GameCubes taped on top of each other.
Yeah.
And
The thing is,
so when you look at the graphics of like Mario Galaxy, Mario Kart Wii, The Legend of Zelda, Twilight Princess, and Metroid Other M, and compare it to like Assassin's Creed, Yakuza, Street Fighter, and all that. It's like you can tell the difference between the Wii and the other two.
also Nintendo wanted to make an affordable console for everyone.
Yeah.
This went at the cost of performance.
Yes, the Sonic the Hedgehog 2006. Sometime in development, the team was cut in half that was making Sonic 06 that then got split over to basically make the Wii version for Sonic 06, but then instead was making Sonic and the Secret Rings, which that came out in 2007 for the Wii. And I'll say this. Sonic and the Secret Rings, it sort of dodged a bullet, but got hit in a different way. Because we all know what happened with Sonic 06. Like, graphic-wise, it was pretty much what you expected of like kind of like a Sonic game into the next.
The graphic was incredible for that time. Incredible.
Yeah, it looked good for the time.
Mhm.
Really, when it comes to this generation, I'm just gonna say one sentence: Xbox 360, Red Ring of Death. Like, like I mean, I remember getting a 360, and I remember every day turning that system on, going, I hope my thing isn't gonna like die
Over
on me.
Go red.
Oh my god.
I had like 4 360s.
Oh, God.
Yeah,
And
I got
so
lucky
often
with
that I
mine.
skipped the Xbox One.
Yeah, the so I'm gonna say a little bit on this, because there's kind of a lot I kind of have on this. So this generation was very kind of interesting to me, because it's where I kind of really kind of first got access to games regularly and online.
Yeah, because the way you were stuff, yeah.
Yeah, because I was mostly kind of like a offline kind of guy when I was a kid. So, to me, yeah, it was interesting, but like, I think the online aspect of it was amazing in that it finally became a full functioning kind of thing with gaming. However, like the DLC kind of side of it and the monetary side of it was really bad. You also have to remember the PlayStation 3 hack or the PSN network hack that happened where
Yeah.
a mass leak happened where accounts were completely, you know, endangered and
Yeah,
credit card
I
information
know.
was lost and all that. Yeah.
There was a meme about that.
Yeah.
It was that the most the game the most downloaded online was the Visa cards.
You know, speaking of online, you know, while there was a lot of positives with it, with, you know, online communities and friends, there was also a lot of bullying, harassment, doxing, account stealing, things as well. You know, people soft mod you. Well, this is debatable, but you know, soft modding of consoles, JTagging, a lot of stuff that you see now with modern systems as well. Piracy was probably another thing as well that, you know, was really
Yeah.
brought into the kind of HD generation. However, the positives of it were the graphics, the games, the voice acting, the quality, the DLCs that expand your games, that give you more online connectivity with friends, meeting people all over the world. I think, in my opinion, for fighting games, I think like it was this generation, I think, in my opinion, where fighting games like really like rose up because of online network play.
Hey, Shadow, do you know what came with this generation too?
I'm maybe forgetting, but what would it be?
The Aquapazza tournaments.
Oh, there, yeah. See, there you go. Like the Acapazza tournaments, like everyone meeting each other here.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
things like that. It was a good gen. I like it's my favorite generation. I'd argue it even surpasses the PS2 generation for me. Where I'd say its downside would be, well, is more so Sony with their absolutely diabolical like launch price. And
599 US dollars.
Yeah, I
No.
will admit.
I'm done there.
It was
That's me.
699. So with that,
There was
it was
the exact same
$800.
thing with Sega with the Saturn in a weird way, but at
Yeah.
least, but they did caught themselves at some point early on, and they reduced the price.
Yeah, they did with the
Yeah,
revisions.
thank
Yeah,
God, because if they didn't, they would have just bitten themselves a bullet. Because I'm sorry, yeah, no, that pricing was initially when they were trying to sell the thing. No, they no, just no. Those prices.
Yeah,
no.
I remember I was like, yeah, I'll get the PS3, I'll buy it. Saw the prices, like, hey, I'm going to Xbox. I went to Xbox for that generation, like for the whole gen. I was Xbox. I was like, I can't afford that.
Yeah.
So that's my thoughts on it anyway. So sorry if anyone else wants to.
Yeah, no, you're good. I would say for this generation, for me, what this generation did, like my taste on this generation is that, my biggest thing for this generation for me that made it, why I have to admit I liked it, was simply because a lot of the games I played around that time that got the continuations onto those consoles and got their continuations onto those was mostly because a good bit of the games they got to continue their series onto that one. The online playing becoming a more solid, can play on, do with just about God knows the amount of games. And just did a lot of the good games, more especially because it was backwards compatible. Because you got to remember in that age too, it was backwards compatible initially for the long time, which helped a lot of the PS2 games, even a few PS2 games, like we've already stated, the Aquapause on certain PS2 games. I think that was PS2, maybe it was 3. Either way, like some of the ones for the rare PS2 and/or PS3 games, to be able to start playing with friends and made that possible, which helped a lot with the gaming and helped made it profit, because a lot of the games they made at that time, like the things they did with it, the amount of graphical detail and the work they put into it, and just the amount of just how fun they made the games, made it so ideally to be able to make it, extremely more fun if you have someone to play it with, that the fact that it could be online with just about anything it came out with just helped made it, at least for me, is what helped made it more solid to make me want to stick with it, and made me stick with PlayStation, and why I liked it, because it allowed me to take just about any game I came across left and right as I was coming across the different games throughout that era that I could play with friends, and gave me a way to enjoy it with not only by myself, but get to play it with friends, and just felt like I was actually doing more with it than just playing it with an empty mind, and just actually could immerse myself into it and have fun with it. Because like, and more especially like it says there, and I agree, it's like, because again, even then the graphics and everything just kept getting better and better again, and just made it feel like a whole new game, and helped made the game feel like it was just something new and fresh again, which just helped keep the attention on it, which helped keep me attentive on being able to, like, be attentive when I was playing it and actually immerse myself into it. If it wasn't for that, I'd be pretty damn bored at that era. That era was me. If it wasn't for that, for them doing as well as they did, I'd been bored out my damn mind, because
Also, do you know what happened? What actually came with this Gen 2? There were a lot of. This was the start of the remake and
Oh yeah,
all those games that came back from older video game consoles.
Yeah, like
we saw we saw like Nintendo reusing all its old games, the collections of games like Mega Man collections, things like that to sell the old games all over again.
Like the Mario, kind of the Mario All-Star Collection thing for the Wii, and the Kirby anniversary too.
That's awesome.
Also on the Wii. In that aspect too, of kind of porting over like old game consoles. And sure, the Wii did have an online store that did have like some, like, pretty much a section of like a bunch of like old video game consoles of like the NES and SNES, and even like Sega Genesis and Turbo and the Turbo graphics too. Graphics and all that.
So there was this was the beginning of the retro.
A lot of
the start of people liking retro games.
Yeah. I suppose this re-releases helped kind of bring a lot of people into it though as well. Like a lot of those like collections would have brought a lot of like younger people into retro gaming in some respects. So we have to be kind of grateful for that in a sense as well.
Yeah, because I mean, there's some of y'all here who, unlike for me in Canada, who have played like the Mega Man series from the older ones. Even you've told me, Shadow, that like you've never got to play them. But if it wasn't for this gen bringing stuff like the Mega Man stuff into the thing, you would never gotten to play it. And the thing about the Mega Man series is that that was one of those game series that back then, as Canada said in his past videos, and I agree with them. I'm sorry, but when it came to the Nintendo days of Mega Man ever becoming a thing, for its era, Mega Man was one of the most
9 coming out
fun franchise single player game out there. Like Mega Man was the thing. So
actually, just to touch, we haven't actually touched on this. Digital downloads.
Oh yeah, that too. That was another thing.
Digital downloading.
It started, but yeah, just see
This
is when
was this was the generation that started digital downloads and indie games at the time.
Yeah,
other indie
that's
games
true.
too, more especially. Yeah, that's true. That's right. Hell, even it wasn't even until this drama that even if you went on YouTube, you could see even YouTubers playing indie games for the most part, because until they had their PCs and or systems be able to like download the games and download them. Yeah, you wouldn't see those things anywhere typically unless you look for it yourself.
Yeah.
You would never
Because
like-
indie games was the specialty of PC. Like all indie games back then were on PC. But now you could release some indie games on PS3 or Nintendo Wii, and this
Yes,
was
yes,
really
yes,
the
yeah.
first time you could have really small indie developers being able to release their game on those console.
this was the era when they first could start doing that, which was pretty cool because
Mhm.
there's quite a good bit of indie games out there that even to this day people still kind of make here and there. That was another good thing about what was great about this drama, because you could play the indie games that was hard to come across and at least get to playing some of them to some kind of degree, which honest to God was a bit of a godsend, because I know for people like me, like, I mean, I choose to watch YouTubers do it mostly, but I'll admit the fact that they have them in there is cool, because if I ever get an inkling to do it, I know I can go in there and look for some of them and I can find some and actually get to play some of my first ever indie games. Because I've never been a person who got to play most indie games growing up. I've never really touched them ever. I only ever got to find out.
I need to play more indie stuff. To be honest, I need to do that more, if anything.
This is a very funny anecdote. You know, the system I saw people talking about indie game. I was so confused that I legit thought it
Did
was
you? Oh, God,
games
no.
made by Indians.
I knew you were gonna say that.
What is an indie game? A game made by Indians? What's so special about Indian making games?
We mean of like games like something like Shovel Knight, something like that sort of aspect of a game.
Yeah, but I get what Canada straight up thought with though. It's like, oh God.
Yeah.
What's with all those Indian developers?
What's special with Indian developers? That was
You're so awful. You two are so awful. Oh God. I mean, I can't blame you for thinking that. God. Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, it was a great. I think it was a great generation, definitely.
Yeah, no, it was definitely a good one. It's definitely, even to this day, is still a good one. Like, granted, Sony's been changing its rules here and there, and thank God, in a way, for some odd reason, they went from saying they were going to drastically change it to kind of leaving it the same. Thank fucking God. But yeah, like, it's definitely was a generation that was a damn good one, because like it offered a lot. Like when they got to this generation at this point, man, the amount of things you could do just became freaking like out there. Like,
Yeah,
good God.
Yeah, true.
Oh, sorry to cut you, but that makes me think of another funny anecdote about this generation. This generation is the first time I play a game called Under Night in Birth. But one of my friends, Sogo, gave me a heart attack without making. He gave me a heart attack. He say, "Hey, Hamnakanda, we are all playing Yunen. Do you want to join us? I know you have that game." He gave me a heart attack because I had no idea what was Yunen. I thought he was.
Trust me. Trust me. That game's title, like, just the title alone, it sounds weird and gross at the same time.
Yeah, because
I was so confused.
But it's one of those cases where, like, if you actually like go to it and like look at it and see what it actually is, then you understand it.
But otherwise, when you just hear it more, especially
Yeah, but without context, it
Like, out of
sounds
the
weird.
blue, out of nowhere, that's where things go, what are you talking about?
Exactly.
Yeah,
That's
like,
what I was thinking.
yeah, because I mean, the fact is, Sogo used the abbreviated term for it too. It's like So come on now. Why did you? What made you think Canada was going to understand the abbreviated term? Speak actual English, dude. Like, gosh. Oh Lord. Yeah, struggling this abbreviation terms of stuff, dude. Not everyone knows that stuff like you do, man. Jesus.
But that's the scariest abbreviation I ever saw in my life. I was so confused that actually scared me. Like, what's this game? It's so weird. That it just scared me. I know. So I can watch a whole movie. I will never scream. I'm not scared. But you can send me an abbreviation. I get scared. I get scared.
Oh God. Yeah, our friend Sogo, he's a trip, that one.
Yeah.
He give me a trip, my lord.
Yeah. As for me, I basically mostly grew up with the Nintendo Wii, and while the graphics in it, like compared to like the PlayStation and Xbox, were not quite basically not good. Like it was kind of, like I said, it was basically just two GameCubes on top of each other into one console. So the one thing they got kind of going for was the innovation of the whole motion control thing with the Nintendo, with the Wii
true.
nunchuck and all.
Yeah,
That's what kind of kept the Wii floating compared to the PlayStation 3 and Xbox, was basically the innovation of the whole motion control. It was so good.
Yeah,
it was so good that PlayStation did their whole thing with the whole PlayStation Move, and Xbox did their thing of not having
the Connect. The one thing nobody wanted. The Connect.
And the thing that failed horribly.
Yeah.
Oh boy, but with the Wii, it had like a good collection of games on it, and
oh yeah, no.
There was some games that tried to use the whole motion control thing, and it really didn't work, and it kind of suffered with like basically like bottom bin shovelware sort of games.
Yeah.
PlayStation Move. Who played PlayStation Move?
It had really good games, and even some like good hidden gems in it too, like World of Goo. That was
Xenoblade Chronicles.
That was pretty much an indie game of it, of like where you it was like a puzzle game, and you like try to connect like a bunch of goo to the end and try to get like some like the goo goblets to like this sort of pipe that goes up.
Oh, I forget the name of the game, but I think I know what you're talking about.
World of Goo.
Yeah, World of Goo. Yeah. Yeah, and it wasn't until like I basically came sort of late that then I got myself a PlayStation 3, and then pretty much and one thing I will say for the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 with like kind of fighting games of like that upstate. Also shooter games, like first person shooter games like Call of Duty, Battlefield, and Halo and like Destiny and all that. Like that basically kind of got a big upsurge of that, of graphically and everything.
Yeah, that's true. I know online community as well for like COD and stuff and Battlefield, like online play for those games, they skyrocketed with that.
Yep.
Yeah. I will say this for the Wii though. I mean, heck, I never owned a Wii I one time got to own a Wii for a while. I at one time got to own my own Wii for a while. But I'll agree with Doom. Like, I mean, heck, despite how much I still prefer PlayStation games over the Wii, there's definitely a lot of Wii games I got to play because I had people around me that I associated with who had the Wii
Sports,
and a lot of the games were.
Oh,
and
that was a game that came with the console. But yeah,
Wii Sports, Mario Kart.
Yep, Mario Kart.
Oh, yeah. Well, no, a lot of games I played for the Wii. For the
Smash
people
Bros.
who that had the Wii, the other games they had was like the Smash Bros. Some of the Fire Emblem stuff, and a lot of rare games like that. And I'll admit that I'm like with Doom. Like, I mean, I'll never knock Wii for it being a bad console because to me, I agree with him. Like, there's definitely some good games for the Wii that has came out. I think they still make Wii games to this day, I think. But regardless, like
I think that's done. I think no one's making a Wii game in 2023.
Ugh.
well, either way, regardless of this,
Unless Ubisoft makes another freaking Just Dance game in 2023. Or a console game that came out in 2008. Or no, 2004 or 6. I don't know. But yeah.
But I'll definitely agree and say that the Wii was definitely one of those systems for this era that the Wii was definitely not a bad console. I mean, it definitely had some very good unique hidden gems, and the way it played its games. You play the right game on it, it was definitely a fun console. It wasn't bad by any means. It's just that, kind of like with Doom, I'll say that the only reason why I had any kind of downfall was just because for almost any game that could have been extremely fun with it, when they tried to use that game as a Wii version, it just did not
and all that
play out as good.
That's what kind of ruined some games.
Play no fun at all, and just a bit of a more of a pain to play than anything else, really. So
motion control became so bad. For example,
because like if you try to play,
I bought Tenchu on the Wii. It was one of the worst Tenchu games because of motion control.
Yeah.
That's like Resident Evil. That's like Resident Evil games. I got to play a Resident Evil game or two on the Wii as well, like Resident Evil 4, like the first standard Resident Evil 4 on the Wii. And I'm sorry, but trying to aim the gun with that was so damn hard. No, that didn't need to go on the Wii. No. That would be an example where they kind of should not have done, and it's like, yeah, that did not go well with the Wii. No.
We agree with that. We agree with that.
Like it. Because the simple fact that you had to keep your stick so damn centered for Leon to aim the gun correctly was such a pain. Because, like, my God, it's like jerking more by accident, and it's like it would just cause your gun to shoot straight up. It's like, God bless it. What a pain. But I'll agree with you now. Like, it's one of those systems that first time, despite it not being a thing anymore, it had a good run. It definitely had some good hidden gems, and it was definitely one of those kind of consoles that I would say, hey, if you ever find one and you can find the right games for it, it's not a bad console to have. It can be fun. There are certain games for it that definitely are worth playing on it. It's good in its own way. You just got to find the right game for it.
Okay, so I'm ready to do the history of the 8th generation. Any final comment? No?
We're good.
Hold on.
One of the 8th gen.
No.
Oh, he was okay. Yeah, we're just going. Okay. Yeah, PS4, Wii U, the Nintendo. Oh boy.
That's the first time I've ever heard like someone making that joke for the Wii U. Never even come to my mind of a siren police.
And
That's
after
the
the
sound
Wii U,
of Nintendo trying to save their console.
and after the Wii U, there's the
Wii
U
That's the first time I've ever heard her making a joke of that.
Yeah.
But,
Nintendo Wii U them.
so, go on.
The 8th generation console are basically an improved version of the 7th generation console. The 7th gen console had a standard definition mode for those who didn't have an HD TV, but the 8th generation console are exclusively in HD because HD TV became affordable for everyone. The leap in terms of visual fidelity is less significant than any other previous generation because we are hitting a plateau in terms of visual fidelity. The difference comes from the performance of a more powerful hardware. Now, and this is the
That's actually a very good point.
Shadow, you wanted before I forget, I think Shadow wanted to talk about the size of video games.
File sizes became massive during this generation, and they still impact us even now in the 9th. A whole hard drive's been taken up full of game updates. Horizon Zero Dawn actually is quite big. Call of Duty Warzone, Fortnite, Apex Legends, like all those games, like they take up a massive amount of space. Is there any other games I'm missing out, by the way, that I'm not thinking of?
I mean, probably
really big.
sometimes fighting games depends, but
Yeah,
a lot of
Tekken's a
games
lot better.
that because 7th gen there were some games that had like updates to some games and whatnot and expansions to some of them and all that. But in the 8th gen, that's where the whole file stuff really became kind of an issue for the 8th gen, and even now with 9, with PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series, whatever. Basically, like it kind of became a big issue. It wasn't a big issue kind of early on, but kind of in the middle, and even especially now in the end towards of this generation, that now file sizes are kind of an issue. Like one good example is that if you have three of the mainline Call of Duty games, which was I think like World War, Call of Duty, Black Ops 3 and 4, you could not have that was basically the entirety of like the PlayStation 4 of its
Yeah, it
file
was.
size.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, and all the kind of play Warzone in that, the battle royale game. Yeah, that was basically one console gone in full, and that's it. You couldn't put
Yeah.
anything else in it.
Yeah, and actually there is one other game that's now came to mind. I just not remember now. Granted, it only got this big because of updates. Why the file size got so big, but there is actually one you're forgetting, Shot, that I just not remember. There is kind of one.
Which one?
Licorice.
Oh shit, yeah. Oh yeah, Licorice. Yeah, that's right. Licorice started off as like a 40 gigabyte game. By all its
And now
updates,
it's
2
like
years
100.
later, it's like 100 and what is it, like 14 or 15 gigabytes now?
It's at least 100 or more. It's at least 100
Yeah.
or more fucking DB. Like, good God.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I think that's the problem with this generation is like the game file sizes are just so big that you're having to fork out mass amounts of money just to get extra space. Do you know?
Yeah, it's a bit ridiculous. Yeah, because for y'all who don't, the SAO Allization Licorice Canada, the SAO game that we like to play, like, that
basically what it was at the
4
time.
megabyte, for example.
Yeah.
4 megabyte.
4 megabytes for that
Yeah.
Genesis game, and then
This, I don't know if you
How
can see,
much?
only 1 gigabyte.
And that's from the disc. That's not counting, by the way, that's not counting updates either.
Without
That's from the
updates.
disc.
that's the disc. That's from the disc
And
itself.
This,
That's not including updates.
look at, I don't know if you can see,
It's
500
not-
gigabyte without any update.
That's without
105 gigabyte. Oops.
100. I was like, wait, 5. I was like, wait.
500.
Yeah,
It was,
I was like,
Yeah, but, yeah.
105 gigabyte
And-
without any
and-
update.
Yeah, and mind you, and to mind you, this is that those two games those two last games that Ken just showed. That's in PlayStation 5.
Yeah.
on 4, it's
Yeah,
probably
but even
more.
still-
Yeah, unfortunately, more
well, yeah, but
because
even still, yeah, but I agree with that. I agree with Shadow that that's the thing. Though it's like the fact that it even takes that much standardly, though, even from a disc perspective, like, oh my god, that is too much space. Like, oh my, yay, like Christ.
But graphically, you have to say though, it's a good gen.
Games on it.
Graphically wise,
It's a really good gen.
Yeah.
Graphics, yeah.
But still,
Yeah.
it's
that amount of space.
there's some subtle differences you'll see from the 7th gen to 8th gen here and there, though that it kind of but it varies of what game and what console.
Very true. Yeah, that's very true. Actually.
Oh yeah, it definitely does. But it's just
You might notice like
it's just
some graphical improvements here and there, but it's either not a lot or it's like identical.
Yeah, like there isn't really much of
Yeah.
a difference. Maybe like.
but I
performance.
think
I would say with-
I think this gen is when the graphical improvements was enough to make it look like very realistic, like in real life.
Yeah.
I think because PlayStation
the
3
start of it.
was already pretty good, but I think PS3 graphics was not good enough to have the real life aspect But yeah, here you can see Final Fantasy 15. It looks like
Yeah,
it could
that looks-
exist in
yeah.
real life.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And that's what I would say, yeah, because I agree with what they said about it. Like, I mean, that's the thing about this generation, ongoing still, as it says, ongoing. Like, I mean, it's one of those things where now at this point it's like it's more of that they've gotten the graphics better, and I mean it still did have a graphical improvement, yes. But I would say it's more of this is more the genre where generation where it was more about
HD.
just smoothing
Yeah, HD.
graphics than adding to it as more of just smoothing it out, which is not a bad thing. But yeah, this is the era where they kind of went from now instead of adding more graphics, they just did their best to smooth it out, which is why it looks even more crazy. And or like Doom said, depending on the game, why some of them kind of don't look that much different, even though it is. And then some that have just a very blatant difference in graphics, and you can tell it because of how smooth
Yeah.
it is.
Mhm.
Yeah, we are now in the HD time.
Yeah.
Well, but you could
Yep.
you could sort of
Yeah,
think
good
like
guess,
the
first
eighth
one.
gen is sort of going through what the sixth gen was, even though in the sixth gen, other than like the online, like the start of it, like the online stuff, the graphic wise in the sixth gen, like there was like more polygons than what the fifth gen with 32 bits and 64 bits and all
Yeah.
that. And basically now doubling it even higher with like I think like 256 or something like that. And
Yeah.
you kind of have games of like that sort of caliber of like sort of like testing of like those 3D aspects of like more powerful graphics and engines at that time. This is
Yeah.
what the 8th gen is now going through now with like now with now HD graphics of everything.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
This is the era where it got this graphical improvement because they could change the style of it. They got to be able to get the HD to be a more consistent, smoothed out thing instead of it being janky when they first were trying it. Because back then with the other gens, that was a thing. They couldn't really switch into HD even if they wanted to and make the graphics really come out correctly with the tech they had then. Now, easy as heck.
Yeah. It's a good gen. I mean, there's a lot of really good games. Online play was improved as well. The online kind of stores and stuff was improved as well. Demos, open bit, like
Yeah.
cross-play or not. Well, yeah, cross-play as well. You can add that into it.
That sort of came in at the third quarter of its lifetime.
Yeah.
But it's still became a part of this generation currently.
I
Yeah.
think of what else is there. PlayStation themes, for example. Well, for PlayStation anyway, you know, themes, avatars, kind of customization.
And this was definitely the only
Well,
time.
I think that was
And as
I
a
think
matter-
that was there from PlayStation 3 with like the avatars and themes and all that.
Oh, it
right?
was actually, yeah. No, sorry, yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
so, yeah. I would say it's where this is also a gen where, like it shows there, that this is more of the gen where not only did they improve a lot of stuff, but the first time we ever got to see them coming out with some brand new consoles and just coming out with new consoles as a whole, and some of the older companies that was not being able to like compete at all come back to life and bring us a lot of the games they had from like the Nintendo eras and stuff, and getting a lot of the older style games coming back to life with current graphic details that we have now, and getting to play them in a more detailed fashion,
That's
which is
true.
why we now have
That
the
is true. Yeah,
stuff.
that's a good point, actually. Yeah.
Like this was a people like them got to come back and make a breakthrough with their tech and got to give us their stuff, but now with a modern day death graphs and stuff, and allowed us to get even more stuff that we couldn't have before.
Also, we know how virtual reality games,
Oh, PlayStation.
Yeah.
especially
Yeah.
with the PlayStation VR.
VR, the Meta
Oculus.
headset thing, and the Oculus
Oculus Rift,
Rift.
Oculus
Yeah.
Quest, etc.
Mhm.
It's like the first time we have virtual reality games that actually work and that becomes into like more public friendly. than before, like with Nintendo Virtual Boy.
Mhm.
We
Yeah.
now see some VR games that actually work pretty well.
Yeah, what I said kind of a while ago of like mentioning about the Virtual Boy being the kind of like the predecessor of virtual reality now.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much.
One thing I'll say is the Wii U, like, can we just basically admit that it was basically a
It's a
deluxe version
failure.
of the regular Wii? It was basically like the normal Wii, but it had more power and was able to do HD, like able to put like onto HD TVs and all that. It was
Yeah.
basically that, and also
Yeah.
you had a tablet along with it, a console
Yeah, okay,
tablet.
the Wii U is the only gen that tried to come back and be a thing, but I hate to say it, but it kind of fell flat on its face. I hate to say, but
In
The
my
Switch
case,
saved them. Yeah.
in my case, I always say that the Nintendo Switch is basically a Wii U 1.5. The Wii U is basically a Wii 1.5, and the Wii is basically a GameCube 1.5.
True,
Bad.
because like,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's fair.
you have a point. You have a point there, Kobach, because like even I said like the regular Wii, it was basically like two GameCubes that like tape on top of each other to form one powerful one Wii. With the Wii U, it was pretty much just I guess like two Wii U's taped to each other to form the Wii U in a weird way.
Well, a Wii, a Wii and a half, considering the touchpad.
True, yeah.
yeah.
And then the Nintendo Switch, like that's where it did got like a bump up of its performance and everything, but it was not as much as like pretty much like the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One.
Yeah,
and
I think it.
even PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series, whatever. Because like when you look at the performance wise of it, like the
Yeah.
Nintendo Switch, I think it was like basically sort of the same performance as a PlayStation 3.
It has a 2015 Tegra X chip inside of it for its processor.
Yeah, it kind of
Something like that. And
But yeah, no, I would say you're right. Yeah, it works on a graphical standpoint of like what a PS3 does.
yeah, and granted, like at least like the one thing with the Nintendo Switch was that you're able to basically carry like that much power onto your hands, like a portable
Yeah.
console, and that's
Yeah.
why
It was
with
like-
the Switch,
it was
it was sort of a handheld, but also a console, a home console machine because of it being able to do two things at once. Even though in handheld mode, it did suffer some performance losses.
But that's the trade-off, though. It's
Yeah.
the trade-off
that's-
is you get less performance, but you get to take it with you and have it at home.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was basically like getting to have a PSP, but an improved version of one that you could, instead of only doing it handheld, had the option to be able to play it, at home on a big screen too, and just basically got to have an improved version of a PSP. Just
and
with a small minor takeaway.
and have like equivalent power as performances as a PlayStation 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was more successful than the Vita, by the way.
Yeah.
True. Yeah.
Yeah, the problem with the Vita was not the performances, but more like pretty much every games that were on Vita was already on PS3. So there was no real point in playing the
And
Vita.
also and it was also Sony themselves that they kind of like dropped it. Kind of like
Yeah.
It's kind of just.
But yeah, the PSP, unfortunately, game errors were ones that, granted, they had a few games they had a few unique games strictly to their system. They did have a few unique ones, but not enough to make a difference, which was the biggest problem. They didn't have a lot of games that gave it that was unique to it, that just you could tell was blatantly just unique to that system.
not
They didn't
like
have a lot of
PSP.
unique games for it.
I think the PSP had more exclusive games. Also, there was
a huge success, but not
Yeah.
you could watch some movies on PSP too.
Yeah, I want to say I think
that
movies-
innovative aspect, but the PS Vita wasn't innovative enough and didn't have enough exclusive games to work.
Yeah, it really didn't, unfortunately. But the only one good one, I'll admit, it was a game they had for it that, my personal opinion, was the only real kind of a good game for it was that one. I don't know how many people. Well, I don't know if all of y'all, how many of y'all would know about it, but Cormac, you might would. That one particular Fate game they had for it. There was only one particular Fate game they had for the PSP that was very literal, unique as fucking just completely different than any other game I've seen them put on the PSP. It was some kind of Fate game.
It was like Fate Extra, or like Fate Extra, something like that.
It's extra.
PlayStation Portable.
Yeah,
I have it.
PS Vita movies. I still have it.
Oh, click. I like this movie.
Click.
PS Vita
The
movies.
first time I saw that movie, I about died.
Click is the best
That's-
Adam Sandler movie.
It's one of the best movies he's done in a long time. That's for darn sure. Yeah, it's been a while since he's done a good one. The Click was definitely one of his most better ones coming back that he's done in terms of movies in a long time. Like that, that movie was so damn funny. Jesus.
Oh yeah, and we were talking about Fate Extra. I do have Fate Extra sealed, new and
Oh,
sealed
nice. Wow, nice.
At home.
Nice.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, it was a really good game for the PSP. It's a lot of, see, if the PSP had managed to come up with a lot of games that were like that, it would have done well, because that game for it was definitely unique and something that just you didn't see on anything else. Like, it was a very unique game for that one, Fate Extra. It was very unique and pretty fun. Challenging as heck, though. I ain't gonna lie. Some of the fights were, even if you got all the knowledge on how to beat the servants and the things you need to know to make the fight easy, even if you got all that, the fights were still sometimes, some of the fights were hella hard. Like, ugh, it was not an easy game to beat, but it was fun, and it was definitely unique. It was not something you saw anywhere else. No other game had the style that one had. Yeah, PSP. If the PSP had did more games like that, they would have done well. But
Yeah, but the Vita, it like even though it was a step up,
It was the PS Vita that didn't do well.
Yeah.
yeah, the Vita didn't do well. PlayStation Portable, it did well, but the Vita,
well, yeah, but I mean,
the
it
next
still
one,
didn't last very long.
it did not. It kind of didn't do well. And Sony,
That was
I think,
also due to the
it
memory
just
cards,
abandoned
though.
it at midpoint.
Oh yeah, that too. The memory cartridge thing. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
another thing about the PSPs in general that was different, that made it a bit fall under. But yeah, no, I mean PSP, PSV, like either one of them.
Go up, dragon. He's literally turned into a dragon. No, as in, like, look at Korbak's screen.
No, look about the.
And
now
Correct.
aside for a split second that he did turn into a dragon, but then he switched to Miku. Miku.
Oh Lord.
Oh,
So yeah.
Make a calendar over here.
Nice.
You guys can see.
Oh,
it.
that's calendar.
Make a calendar.
Well, it's actually that month.
Yeah, but to sum up that, I would definitely say a good way to sum up.
Consoles.
Yeah, I would definitely say a good way to sum up how the 8th gen and going gen is, though. It's like, it's definitely, compared to its other predecessors, like it's again still had a lot of improvements throughout the years, and it's just a lot of things about it that definitely got improved, were better, and they did a lot of things about it with, and it definitely was an era that helped us allow to get
What the game?
some new style of game systems and things that we
Team Fortress.
never could have had before.
Oh, yeah, true,
But
true.
yeah, it's a good era.
That's
Definitely had a lot going on. I'll say that.
yeah, it's true. So all that's left really now is our current gen, really our 9th gen.
Okay, so
The
I have my
PlayStation
one final
5.
comment.
Oh sure.
The Xbox One. Can we all agree it's the worst console name ever existed in the history?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Terrible.
The third console
I
Microsoft did,
universally agree.
they
The
named it
Xbox
the
One
same as the
like,
first
is the
console.
dumbest name of all time.
Let's not
There's
forget.
There's also
tried to
the
de-arm it.
Ouya.
Oh, you do,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Ouya.
It's
Oh, yeah,
out.
let's-
It
Honestly,
hurts.
no, honestly,
It hurts
Ouya
me.
sounds better than Xbox One because
Yeah.
Exactly.
because it's something different. But the Xbox
When it comes to the
One,
Xbox
there's
One,
already an Xbox One. So why are
They
you-
tried to put DRM on it. They tried to charge for pre-owned games. They tried to turn it into a TV system. That was their marketing, by the way.
Yeah, that was. They were trying to make that console like basically like a all-in-one sort of thing instead
Yeah.
of a gaming console.
Which in a way, I mean, I get why they would want to try to do it. I mean, to me, that's not necessarily a bad idea, but it's just you're a gaming company first. I feel like you trying to do all of that into one system can create too many problems. Like what the hell?
Like
we
I
all
can
thinking?
get the home entertainment system, as in I can get them like doing like all of that, but why DRM the system? Why restrict, like why charge for pre-owned copies of games to play on like at different accounts? Like all this stupid crap they didn't need to do that only ended up damaging their brand even more. The only thing that saved them was backwards compatibility. Literally, that was the only thing that saved them.
And then in that generation, PlayStation, because PlayStation 4 had to exist because Xbox messed up with the Microsoft and Nintendo messed up with the Wii U. So they just had to be there. They played it safe and they had a success by doing nothing. Now that I think about it,
Yes.
because on the PS3, it was so expensive that the PlayStation, the PlayStation lost the console war, so they had to do a lot of change. The PlayStation was being too cocky.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, you got Nintendo with their kind of underperformance of like technical performance and everything, and then Xbox basically tried to do all of one, and then Sony basically did kind of the smart thing and did basically nothing with their end.
Yeah.
Sure, sure, when you get the
Facilities are set there.
compatibility, that's kind of a bummer, but kind of better off than getting like than basically what Xbox was trying to show off. I mean, what's the difference of me watching a movie on PlayStation than on Xbox?
Yeah, exactly. There
Yeah,
wasn't
there wasn't.
really any.
It's like, yeah,
Like, yeah,
I mean, sure,
like the ability to do that, sure, that's nice and all, but why make that as your main marketing?
yeah, like I'm sorry, PlayStation was the only one who was smart in our console war that even if they only somewhat lost it, they still won more than anything over that because they were smart and was like, there's no need to do anything more. It's fine the way it is. That's obvious. Like
Now, as opposed to ninth
Gen
gen
9. There's only 2 consoles for the Gen 9.
Yeah.
That's
for
sad.
now.
Whoa. Come on, computer, what are you doing?
yeah,
This page.
I would say more now because they might give us something later, but for now,
For
yeah,
now.
this is
Yeah.
that's what we got.
Yeah, just saying, but the name Xbox Series X and Series S is the most confusing thing ever.
Yeah,
It is.
exactly.
Yeah,
Very
it's
I
confusing.
just call it
agree, yeah.
Xbox
I don't-
Series at this point.
Microsoft, why they can move their naming things? I think it's better than the Xbox One, at least.
Naming
Yeah,
things
yeah,
is simple. So why is Microsoft like what's with the Xbox One name and what's with the Series X, Series S thing? That's why I said like Xbox Series whatever, because
Yeah.
what's the point?
I know.
But anyway,
Yeah, like they're
yeah.
getting
We time to make
bad
it
with
real.
their naming.
The 9th generation console
Bad with their naming.
naturally display graphic in Ultra HD 4K that have even more detail than the HD game of the heavy gen. This generation have a huge improvement in terms of performance. It can process HD visual in a better frame rate than previous generations. and the loading time are so
Yeah.
fast that photorealistic open world game can load in less than 3 seconds. Even with graphical leap of the 9th gen, the wow factor of the next generation graphic is less significant. Oh, I can't speak anymore. Significant.
Significant.
Whoa, I misspelled that word. That's why I'm not able to speak. Okay, you get what I mean. Less impressive because it's because in the last 2 generations, we hit a plateau in terms of visual fidelity. The visual upgrades are less noticeable. So do you have any comment on this generation?
More or less, I disagree with the statement. Like, I agree with the statement. Like, it's just we've kind of hit kind of a peak, really, in terms of like what we can do graphically. We can push
Look
it
at
obviously
this.
with
PS3
Yeah, like-
and PS5 graphic.
there is a difference. You can see it like you can, but like it's not major like a PS2 to PS3 type thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Different.
Honestly, I'll say that there's an improvement, a graphical improvement, the day where the video games will stop having like hair, like I don't know how to say this in English, but bad hair, like
hair texture.
because
It's
even
on-
nowadays with PlayStation 5, if you watch the hair, it's like it's not that great compared to the face expressions.
Yeah.
There's still a problem with hair.
Yeah.
If you're
Now, there's certain things that didn't iron out too well with this genre. Like, I mean, with this generation, like, I mean, it is a graphical improvement, and there is, like, you can tell there is, but like, yeah, like you said, like, there's certain things about it that is just the smaller details of, like, say, the visual hair or certain really small specific things. Yeah, that's where it's like it's kind of a not much of a change, but yeah.
I would
But
say
I
the
think
biggest-
now with the new systems, the particles effects are now extremely beautiful.
Yeah.
Like you can
The
see
resolution.
with the Street Fighter 6 screenshot, but a lot of games nowadays have extremely strong particles, and it runs perfectly.
And then
At least we have that.
Yeah, so far, like kind of in this generation, it's more of like power performance of like between the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series.
And also
Like
RTX.
how many things are running all at the same time and able to leave it on like 60 frames because kind of like what Shadow said, like last gen we kind of got that peak graphical plateau. There we got there now. Just now in the 9th gen, it's just now kind of more like kind of better shading and lighting and everything, and kind of like how much of like stuff is running all at the same time while still leaving on a 60 frame per second running like frames per second.
Yeah, because that's why I could say even for the Last of Us right there, not like. Yeah, I can see what you're saying with that because like it does seem like it's like the graphics are better, but I'll agree that like for The Last of Us, like the tone and everything is better, but it's still definitely missing something. They don't quite got the tones in certain colors really, you know, what seems like should be just where they could do a lot better. Like it, when you look at it, you think it. Why can't it do better? You can't help but beg the question: how can they not do that? Something about it just seems like it should be able to do better than that, but it's not quite.
Just to interject, this is only its second year. We're only 2 years into this generation. One of my biggest problems, however, isn't the graphics plateau. It's not that; it's the scalping and availability of the system itself. Not that it's much of a problem anymore, but at the start of this generation, like you unless you were a guy that pre-ordered or got very lucky, you could not get a system at all.
True.
Yeah, no.
And that's I'm not even counting the pricing part of that either. I'm literally just counting that as
Just
like,
availability
as
of the models they have too.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
Almost every single
yeah,
time,
that is a thing, especially
oh.
what happened kind of in a year later with the you know what happened in 2020.
Oh yeah.
But anyway,
yeah, true,
but yeah, and with all that happening, yeah, but even still, like even still, like I think like one good example is actually Ratchet and Clank Rip Apart for PlayStation because of how that game was able like to run with like kind of switch transitioning of like one map to another and all that. Like it's actually kind of impressive when you look at it. It's actually impressive when you like watch it and all that. Playing it might be even better and all that, but like watching it of like how it transitions of like kind of one spot to another like very seamlessly. Like well done, Insomniac Games.
That was great. Yeah, it looked gorgeous. Yeah.
But for like other games like something like Street Fighter 6 or Yakuza 7 and like the next like Final Fantasy game and all that, like it's kind of hard. It's really hard to say from the 9th gen to the 8th gen because it kind of more comes down of like really that the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series XS that it just kind of now comes down to more like power performance of not in the more graphical terms but more of like frames per second of like
FPS,
like 60 frames per second constantly, or even going up to 120 frames per second, which is
or like.
And it seems as though like in this generation, at least for PlayStation and Microsoft, or Sony and Microsoft with PS5 and Xbox Series XS, that's where gaming is now going towards home console gaming is basically now power performance of like how many things are running and staying staying at a consistent frame rate of like 60 frames and not dropping below.
Yeah,
that's the only part where it's kind of struggling for now with itself is that they've got it to reach it where it can do it, but getting it to do it steadily and to stay consistent is the only real issue with it.
I mean, like so far, nothing has really changed for PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X, and I'm even gonna throw in the Switch a little bit too, because it kind of came out at that time a little bit too. But
sure.
But for now, it's sort of up in the air since this 9th gen is still going. And we kind of haven't seen any big difference of the 9th gen to the 8th gen. Like a more kind of like a reason to like we're gonna be in like kind of people that are from the 9th gen want to go into or in the 8th gen want to go into the 9th gen.
I will say this much. Playing like the best example is Ryza 2 for me. So I played Ryza 2 on PS4 completely through, and then ran it on the PS5 version. And I have to say the upgrade to PS5 was a hella difference. Like the 60 FPS, the visuals, the resolution, like it felt so much smoother than it did on the PS4 version.
Yeah, certain.
Yeah.
Which one you play?
Do you know?
Yeah, that's the thing about the current PlayStation 5. It's like there are certain games that run where you can tell there's an extreme amount of difference in how well it does, and then the other games it's still kind of not so much. But it just kind of depends on what you play.
That is true.
On it.
But like I think the thing is like it's only 2 years. Like, you know, we could be seeing one. We're probably going to get console revisions. So that would be one thing in terms of hopefully accessibility, like the PS3 generation, where it'll become maybe more like price friendly, I suppose. Hopefully, SSDs themselves will be
and more and when stocks are more filled up too. Of
true.
Inventory stuff.
But I mean, like you know, as someone who's been fortunate enough to be able to have a console, I'm enjoying it so far. It's really good. It's really nice. But But I do see the point about the plateau. Like, yeah, I definitely do think we've hit a plateau. But I'm kind of at the point with it where I was like, we don't need to keep pushing for it. Like, I'm okay with the current plateau. You know, I'm okay with it being this way for the next 10, 15 years. To be honest, I'm happy with it.
Till
My-
the next graphical
Yeah,
upgrade.
true. I feel like, yeah, true. Like,
Mm.
yeah, true. I feel like it's good enough of upgrades to the point where they don't really need to upgrade all that anymore at this point. If anything, just get it to stay stable now. I feel like we've hit a generation where it's like they've beyond gone well and above for the graphics and stuff enough to make it to where, man, you don't even need to enhance it anymore. You've hit that perfect peak, sweet spot. Just get it to stay stable now, and we'd be good.
Yeah, definitely.
And then I could go for 10 years of them doing that and worry about just doing that for 10 years like you. They could do that for 10, 15 years. And I don't give a care if the visual graphics get any more enhanced. At this point, I feel like they've already done such a good job with it to where it don't really need it for a good while. It don't need it. You've already hit the height mark you need for it to make it feel just fun to visually play. Like it's fine. Just get it to stable. Now, if anything, keep it stable. If anything,
I'll just say anyway that the improvement of loading times from PS4 to PS5 was pretty huge.
It was,
Because,
it's massive, it's
Like
massive.
I'll give you a short example, but on PC I'm playing Genshin Impact. It's a pretty recent game, and on PC when I load a map, it's around 15-20 seconds. On PlayStation 4, it's like 1 minute and 30 seconds to load a map. So it's extremely long and very problematic when you're trying to playing with a PS4 player. So there's that. And then on PS5, it's like 3 seconds.
Yeah. That's insane.
It's like nearly immediately.
yeah,
It's crazy.
That's what
Like,
I'm saying. Yeah, that's what I'm a little bit saying. Like more of like power is like loading times and also of like how things are like popping up, everything of how fast like stuff pops up and how like performance of like frame rate of like all the things running all at once and able to stay at that frame rate without like dropping and all that. And at this point, like in the 9th gen, it's more of like how good the power is of like loading times and kind of like how much stuff is on the screen without like slowing down or stuttering or whatnot.
yeah, that's what it's. Yeah, that's what they do.
Which is fine. It's fine and it's impressive, but at the same time, is it
It's not that much different than before. It's still,
exactly?
yeah, like at least from a graphic standpoint, it's better than 4, but it's
Nope.
not.
Yeah.
Huzzah!
Unlike kind of PlayStation 3 to PlayStation 4, for example, like 7th gen to 8th gen, there was like a noticeable difference.
Oh yeah, that was a big difference then. Like when you take any of the PS2 or 3s into the 4th generation of PS4, oh yeah, no, the graphical difference is beyond obvious. Like just damn. But I feel like with this gen, like we've kind of hit that point where you can't really take that any further now, and it's kind of hit its highest point, except for very specific games, and as otherwise it's kind of hit its highest point at the moment.
Yeah.
For now, anyways.
So
Me, when I play game like Spider-Man on PS5 or Revelation, and then I couldn't believe it would take like 3 seconds to load this huge open world map. Whoa, with this photorealistic graphics. So I'm quite impressed because I know that the
Powerful
PS5
processing.
have an equivalent of 64 gigabytes of RAM, which is huge.
yeah,
64 gigabytes
Yeah,
of
that
RAM.
is holy.
That's a lot.
that's pretty big. Yeah.
That's no wonder why it's so fast. I know the PS4 have, I think, 8 gigabytes of RAM or 4 gigabytes. I don't remember. Something like that.
It's definitely low. It's definitely not nowhere near as high as that. That's for darn sure. Good
Yeah,
God.
and then the
That is
PS3
a
will
huge
have
difference.
500 megabytes of RAM. The PS3. So it makes me think. You see things in perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
8. It has 8. PS4 had 8.
Okay, 8. Okay. Something like that.
Ah, and an 8. Okay.
Okay,
That
so
makes
now I
sense.
think like we
That-
can
that-
start.
that Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Get the last
Okay,
bit of it now.
so
Yeah.
Okay,
so
that was a
let me
nice
continue.
podcast. Thank you, Armand Canada.
No,
Thank you.
the podcast is not finished. Because this the first section
It was just the introduction.
Quick.
was just the
quick
introduction.
game.
This was just quick video game history. Me, it took me
Yeah.
like 5 minutes to read all of that, but
It took longer on each like generation discussion, so
Yeah.
because each everyone
we talked about like some other
wanted to
things and all that.
say stuff. So I was not expecting this to take this long, but and then by talking we also touch a bit about the other subject by talking.
Yeah, kind of all of it at once. We're kind of
So-
just hitting
Oh, we
all
kind
the
of
subjects
did,
all at
didn't
once.
we?
Well,
We covered them, yeah.
The subject number 2. In your
Yeah, we can
opinion-
do the. I think we can do the 2 and 3 at the same time.
Okay,
That's
okay,
yeah,
yeah.
that's
I would say 2, 3. I would say
Okay,
2, 3, and 5 would make sense to do because we didn't really say with those
Okay,
yet.
so
2, 3,
okay,
and 5. I
so
feel like they're all
let's do
really go.
subject 2 and 3 at the same time.
Okay.
What is- Your biggest generation Z, and what is the least impressive generation Z? So that's the 2 subjects, and then
Can I dip?
Yeah.
who want to start?
Can I dibs to go first?
Yes, Shadow. you go
Um,
first.
So the biggest generational leap, in my opinion, is PS2 to PS3. The fact that you go from,
6th gen to
Into
7th
the-
gen.
yeah, like 6th gen to 7th gen with the HD graphics, 10 the resolution 720 to 1080p online DLCs content. I think that was massive. Like when I first saw that for the first time, Resistance was one of the first games I saw. I was blown away by like just how graphically impressive it was. However, I do kind of feel like in a way that like PS2 graphics, like 6th gen graphics, is very nostalgic. Like it's very special, to me. And I think that's, I don't know, it's kind of weird how I kind of look at like those 2 generations, but I do think like the PS2 to PS3 gen was massive, not only in terms of like the console's performances, but the graphical output and the games and the scale that were being produced as well at the time. To answer the second one, which is the least, is it the least one? So the least
Yeah.
generational leap?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, God, that's hard. I'm caught between PS4
Huh?
and PS5, but I can't, mainly because like PS5 is faster. It's a more
Okay.
powerful system. But if you look at the
Graphically wise, not big of a difference.
But it's the same games.
yeah, I don't know.
It's
it
basically the
depends,
same
though.
games. Like
Kind
there's
of,
no
though.
differences.
No, because you have faster, you have a better frame rate, you have better visuals, you have higher.
Yeah, but that's the same games. You play the same games. They're the same.
It's just it's true.
I mean,
That's like Frontiers.
not wrong.
Look at their
Yeah,
But then
wait,
again, wait. Is it too early to make that statement though? Like I'm not saying that's my statement. I'm just saying, is it too early to make that statement though? Yes, because it's only been 2 years. So realistically, wouldn't it be? I guess PS3 and PS4 then realistically would be probably more of a realistic answer than PS4 and 5 because it's too early to say that yet. So yeah, my official answer would be PS3 to 4.
Okay,
But-
let's see.
That's my opinion, I guess. But like the reason I'm saying like PS4 and 5 as well is because there is still a lot of games being produced for PS4. Like that's where, and that that's where I suppose the
Yeah.
argument comes in from a lot of people is this really a next generation in quotations?
Yeah, I understand. I understand. I understand because they're still being game for the PS4. And it feels like the PS4 is holding the PS5 and the Xbox Series consoles back to its full
Yeah.
potential.
It is, but you know,
A little bit, yeah.
but I do think once we get to that full kind of, you know, once the PS5 and Xbox Series get that
Really
full
get
kind
their
of support,
footing in and everything, then
yeah,
have a
Yeah.
a definitive answer.
yeah. I really have to,
The
I really have to think about that one.
The PS4 is on life support.
I
That's how
just
I
realized I
see
made
it.
a stupid
Yeah,
joke
yeah.
without even realizing it.
I was like, I really have to think about that for a second.
Yeah, so
That's my answer. So
yeah,
So
so in my
4 seconds.
case,
Okay.
Yeah.
Go back.
so in my case, it will be really easy for the lowest because, like I said, the PS4 to PS5, there's pretty much no differences outside of dynamic lighting and loading time. There's not really improvement. Pretty much all the PS5 games are also on PS4. Maybe not too much now, but at least at the beginning of PS5, all the games were also on PS4, which means that the consoles are not so much different, and that's pretty much the same for Xbox One and Xbox Series X. And for the biggest leap, I'll say the second most biggest leap will be between PS2 and PS3 because graphically they improved it by a lot. Like the PS3, that's when you saw the most photorealistic
Game
graphics
or the graphics, yeah.
compared to PS2, where the characters were still pretty blocky, like
yeah, like polygons and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
no, not as much as PS1, but you couldn't say that this was realistic yet. But PS2 to PS3 was huge. But I think the biggest leap was from 8-bit to 16-bit, because the 8-bit area where the games were extremely primitive, and not as much as Atari, but they were like pretty simple. There were like maybe a few levels, and this was it. But with the SNES, we started to see way more complex games, way longer games. Like I talked about Final Fantasy VI, but just Final Fantasy VI itself, you could take like 50 hours to finish it, and even after that, you had extra stuff to do on the game. So I think the difference between NES and SNES was huge, like night and day.
Yeah.
And compared to PS2 and PS3, I think it was even bigger than PS2 to PS3.
Okay.
So that's my opinion.
Who to go next?
I'll start. I'm gonna do sort of what Korak did and do like the lease, and I think I'm basically gonna agree in that so far it's kind of like the 8th gen to the 9th gen, like performance and power wise, that's actually noticeable with like loading times and everything I kind of just said in the 9th gen segment. But graphic wise, it's just not really noticeable, and it also comes down of like our human eyes of how much we can like take in, and of HD stuff and realistic stuff, and it also comes down to like the game developers of like their arts themes and all that, of how far we can get to that point of like realistic look to some things of like Final Fantasy and Call of Duty and all that. But as of like right now, even though it's only been 2-3 years now with the 9th gen going, it's not that noticeable from the 8th gen. Now, as of like the greatest leap, I'm gonna have to go with like the 4th gen going into the 5th gen, because it's like you're going from a 2D plane into the 3rd dimension, and
Yeah, that's a good point.
yeah, and that was kind of like the biggest step to go to almost of a realistic thing. Like, look at the Tekken series that started in the 5th gen. Crash Bandicoot, that's in 3D. Mario 64, like that had like double the bits than what a PlayStation console has on that console. The Nintendo 64 literally had 64 bits in it, with the polygons and everything. And I think that was kind of the biggest step of gaming, of like graphic wise, from 2D sprites and animation to 3D polygons, bodies, framework, and all that. And also with the camera too. So I kind of think the 4th gen to the 4th gen to the 5th gen was kind of the biggest graphical.
Oh, is he?
Huh?
Oh, did he?
What now?
Did your audio cut?
What?
I think your audio cut.
No,
there.
I think. Yeah, no, I think the one's just done.
Yeah, I was done.
Okay, sorry, we just weren't sure. Okay, no problem.
It's okay.
Okay.
It's all good. Yeah. No, you're done. I'd be the last one to go now. Now I'd be the last one. Okay. See, for me, it is. I think it's me. I want to say it's kind of happened in 2 different genres in a way, respectively, depending on. Because the way I see it, I would say I kind of have 2 when it comes to the greatest one, and have kind of a double answer for that, just because, like, I'll agree with Doom that, like, I'll agree with Doom answers and Shadows in a way, because, like, from Doom's perspective, yeah, that was also one where they had a great, a pretty big graphic leap and stuff, and that I had one in its own right for various reasons. But then, in a way, so did anywhere from, in my personal opinion, anywhere from like 2 to no higher than 4, simply because, granted, 4 doesn't have a big difference in graphics from 3, but that also depends on the game you played. The thing about the genres from PlayStation 2 to 4, and say the ones that Doom said, the thing about them was you got to consider also the kind of games that you would play on those consoles respectively. Depending on what game you took from those consoles and which ones you played, there was noticeable difference on a pretty evenly fair ground for both of them respectively, but that only depends on what you played. Like, if you take some of the games from, like what he said about Mario 64 and stuff, and its genre of its age, yeah, for games like that, that's where they had a big leap. For PlayStation 2 on the 4, I would say it kind of lasted up to 4 bits, simply because if you took games like, say, the Mega Man series that me and you like to play, and we take games like those, that's where it had a big leap too in its own right, because of what Mega Man was for its kind of games like that one. It had a big leap because when you took the kind of graphics 4 and 3 had onto the Mega Man 8 and before X started, and you took it onto those, yeah, the detail was extremely different compared to this Nintendo days and whatnot. Like, ridiculous gap in there. So mine's kind of a double answer, just because I feel like it had 2. Both when Shadow and Doom, both pairs respectively, but that's only based on the games you would play and which ones you decided to play and you took from that genre respectively in that era. So in a way, they both did in a way. It's just, it depends on what you played during those times. Because for some games, yeah, there wasn't really much of a difference. There really wasn't. Some games had more specific ones, like say a second chance. If you were playing like Yasuka 1 onto PS2 that went onto a Six system or whatever, depending on which ones you played, yeah, the graphics weren't necessarily hugely different, but that's only for those. And if you took other games, oh no, the difference is ridiculous. So it just kind of varies, you know? Throughout the entire time of that genre up to 4, it varied a lot. And I would say the only one I feel like had the least, though, I will say I agree with y'all unanimously when it comes to the least one, though. I would have to say 4 into 5, simply because with 4 into the 5 genre that we've got now, I mean, yes, there is a noticeable difference in graphics to a way. And I mean, it's not that it's unnoticeable, but every single major, what you could tell, eye-popping detail of difference in graphics change that it had and where it was constantly hitting was all the ones before that. The only real thing that the 5 has compared to its predecessors was just that it's faster. That's it. That's its only real big extreme difference. Other than that, there's not much of a difference. But if you take any of the other genres before that, respectively, depending on what you did, anywhere from like 64 and stuff into PS2 and then say 3 into 4 had a big graphical difference. Simply because depending on what game you played, the difference in detail was either extreme or kind of eh. So that'd be my answer. Just in a way, we had a bunch of great leaps kind of within 2 different periods of the genres, generations. It had like 2 big leaps, respectively, depending on what you played, what games you played where. And then the least one would be between the 4 and 5, simply because with that one, it's more of a power, not a visual.
I would kind of disagree on that point. Like, it is more power, but there is some visual upgrades to it as well with 4K and stuff like that. So
I'm not saying it doesn't, but I'm not saying it doesn't. It's just that, you know, like we've already said, though, I'm not saying that it doesn't. I just said I'm not saying that it doesn't, but just the PS4 graphics and the PS5, there's a difference, but the leaps between like 2 and 3 or the Super Nintendo or the 64 into the PS2-ish genre, their leaps were bigger than 4 into 5s. Their graphical leap difference and whatnot was bigger.
What
I'm not saying it doesn't happen.
What I'll say about this
Theirs was
is
bigger.
that the difference between PS4 and PS5 is not unnoticeable, but I don't care. Like, I think the PS4 graphically, the PS4 is already good enough. So why caring about like a small difference? Like, I don't care. I don't care. I just want good games. And I think, the difference is not unnoticeable, but not really
not
high enough to make me wow.
Yeah, well, that's why I kind of said I kind of agree with Shadow and Doom's answer. What they said were the greatest leaps, and to combine them, because in a way, both spots had big visual leap differences visually. Both those eras did in their own way. It just depends on what you played within that genre. Because there were certain games, like you would take the Mega Man series or certain things, that if you played them on, say, the PS2 and 3 when they started making X series and stuff like that, the leap was different. The leap was difference in leap graphics was big as hell. And if you take the PlayStation 2 and the Super Nintendo eras and stuff and whatnot into 3s, yeah, big difference there, because that's when they first started trying to attempt the 3D era. So yeah, when they're first doing that, oh yeah, the leap difference was immense then when they made PS2 and Super Nintendo by then. The graphics was extremely different. And then the same thing by the time we hit 4. Just saying. Like, to me, it just, because I played a lot of games that if I was to take some games I played on 3, right? And I try to go back and play them on 2 or play them on 4 if they've got a PS4 version, I don't feel like there's much of a difference, but that only depends on the game. When yet I can take another game and I see an extreme difference. But that's just me. That's just me though, because like I play because I there's a good bit of games like say the Dynasty Warriors and stuff that even though it's the same bloody game, I get it. It's the same. I get the Dynasty Warriors and stuff are the same basic game no matter which ones you play on anything. I get it, but it's like even with that series, if I was to take some of the older ones of that and I was to play them on PS2, but then I play the ones on PS4 and stuff. It may be the same game, but the graphics and difference is huge compared to where Dynasty Warriors started. Like it's just extremely different. So it just depends on the game in a way. That's why I say it's a bit of Doom and Shadow are both right. Doom and Shadow are both right, respectively, for those genres for where they were, because depending on what games you did, the difference was immense. In other games, it was kind of was there a difference? Yes. Was it major though? No. So it just kind of depends on what you played. That's me though. That's just me because I have played so many different games on all the genres and have played so many different games that to me that's just something I personally noticed. That's how I felt when I played a good bit of games. As I continued to play different ones here and there and tried out new games to me that were completely different and alien to me. That was just differences I noticed. Like some of them had big graphical difference and others did not, respectively.
I'll tell you this, like if you play pretty much here's the thing. Like I played pretty much a Nintendo Wii before I went to PlayStation 3. And kind of noticing the graphics between the Nintendo Wii to the PlayStation 3, it was very noticeable. It was very noticeable. And again, it's kind of like I said, it was basically two GameCubes taped together into one console, essentially. But I will agree with Shadow to that degree that the 6th gen to the 7th gen, it was like a noticeable up in graphics and also more. There's also a thing with like more like finer details of like texturing on like the characters' models, the landscape and everything. And I will admit to that there was that noticeable change from like the 6th gen to the 7th gen was like kind of more finer details of like characters, like expressions, their textures, and everything. I will admit to that, but I still think the 4th gen to the 5th gen is a bit bigger in my opinion.
No. I don't know. To me, the PS4 to 5 gen is the only one I gotta admit I can't give a straight answer on, just because to me it's very mixed right now. I don't know what to say about it, just because unless I play, because like take the NEP game, NEP Sisters versus Sisters Neptunia game that we got for PS5. It's only exclusive to that one. Like that's a game where I can see an example of what I mean by how like unless you play certain games like that, that's the only time where the difference in graphics, I feel like, is the only time where there's an actual major difference in its graphics. Other than that, not so much. I'm not saying it doesn't exist at all, but just
it's very little to notice a thing.
Yeah, like yeah. And see, I feel like when it comes to the other eras, though, like say from like what you said, from the Super Nintendo era days and whatnot. Yeah, like if you go any eras back before that one to that one, that's where there was a big leap.
Okay, well, I think probably we should
PS3
move on
to 4.
before we end up cutting out
let's
from
move on.
like.
Yeah, sorry. But y'all get my point. Y'all get what I'm saying. Like, I'm just saying, in a way, y'all are both right, but just for both different reasons. And that I kind of feel like mine's just, all I can say is there's a double answer on that, just that y'all are both right. I kind of feel like both areas had a leap.
Okay.
And that the only one that didn't have one current standing is the 4 to 5.
Sorry to interrupt, Dragon, but we need to move on. Let's move on.
Yeah. No, that's it. That was pretty much our piece.
Okay. So, in my opinion, I always have a debate between these two generations. So for me, the biggest generation leap is between 5th generation to 6th generation. So let's say the PlayStation 1 to the Sega Dreamcast. And then the reason why is that because the Sega Dreamcast generation, the 6th generation, it was when 3D graphic looked like Pixar movies. Yeah. So for me, it was the biggest generation leap. And then I remember the first time I saw the Sega Dreamcast on a kiosk, it was on a Best Buy. My jaw dropped. It went to the floor like that because I saw a game like Sonic Adventure and Shenmue and Dead or Alive 2 on the demo unit. I couldn't believe my eyes because for me, it was like movie like Toy Story, and then I played. Back then I had a PS1, and I say, so it is in 3D, but it does not look like the 3D movie I see. I see, for example, Toy Story. But when I saw the Dreamcast, I said, wow. For me, it looked weird at that time. The graphic was impressive. I was impressed. So every Dreamcast game, every PS2 game, GameCube game, Xbox, the graphic was impressive. For me, it was the biggest generation leap in terms of graphic. And then for me, let's say the second generation leap, the second biggest was from 4th gen to 5th gen. For example, the Super Nintendo, the Nintendo 64, because it was the leap to 3D, but I know 3D game existed on the Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis, like Star Fox and Virtua Racing and Panorama Cotton, a game like that, but it wasn't the norm. On the, when I saw the Nintendo 64, I saw Mario. I said, "Whoa, Mario looks so good in 3D." So for me, the biggest generation leap is from 5th gen to 6th gen. The Sega Dreamcast generation. That was the biggest generation leap.
PlayStation to PlayStation 2.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I will admit that was where like 3D gaming and everything started like smoothing out, and companies now understood the techniques and everything, how camera works and how like the graphics works, and actually have like now more stuff to actually work with it.
Yeah, more like tech as well, and more advancements in like
Yeah.
kind of graphic shading and all that. Yeah.
Mhm.
I wish I was there to have
For
one
my
there.
opinion, the worst generation leap ever was from 7th gen to 8th gen, from PS3 to PS4.
Really?
Oh,
For me, in my opinion, because PS3 is HD graphic and PS4 is still HD graphic.
True. So
yeah, it's true actually.
And then I can see,
Well, that's why I said when I
because me having a 4K TV, I can see the difference between PS4 and PS5. I can still see the difference. But for me, the PS3 from PS4, I remember the first time I saw a PS4 game, I said to myself, it looks just like a PS3 game. Especially the early PS4 games. I said the same thing for the Nintendo Wii U. For me, the Nintendo Wii U, the Nintendo Switch, the Xbox One, and the PS4, they all PS3
look like
graphics.
7th gen.
Yeah. So for me, the 8th gen is just barely an improvement of the 7th gen, in my opinion, the way I see it.
Well, that's why I said that depends on the game for me.
That's my opinion.
No, it's cool. It's nice to get everyone's like perspectives on it.
Yeah.
I think, but which is
But
all
at
we
least
can.
for the 9th gen, it went to 4K graphics, so I can still see a difference, but by then, by the 9th gen, even if I saw a difference, it wasn't the same wow factor I experienced for the 5th gen or the 6th gen, because at that point I see it was like it's impossible to improve a photorealistic game. So it's like
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
upward to a plateau. So that's my point.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why I say for me, like, that's why I say it's like 3 years where I would say it stopped becoming extremely differently noticeable. But anything prior was like, oh yeah, more especially depending on what game you played. Then it was very,
It's time to stop.
yeah. But I was just agreeing with her. It's like, yeah, that's where it's like, yeah.
People.
Fourth question.
Do you think we'll break the graphic plateau one day? This is the fourth subject. Okay.
I personally
so
think
this
we
time
will
I'm
at some
going to
point,
stop.
definitely.
So for me, we will break it one day, but it's going to be in the far future, maybe 50 years from now. Because currently, I know the PS4 have 1.4 teraflop. So 1.4 teraflop is like it can do 1.4 trillion operations per second, and then the PS5 is about 10 teraflop. So it can do 10 trillion operations per second, and the Xbox Series X can do 12 trillion operations per second. And then I read an article, I don't remember where, that they say that a computer engineer that to have a graphic indistinguishable from real life within like 90 teraflop. That is estimation. So we are still far from it. And then the other reason why I think we're still very far from it is because in the early days of computer, each year the processing power of the computer doubled. Like it was it was like that. It doubled each year. Like that, the processing power also doubled. But now, it's the processing power of each computer is hitting a plateau. The same thing for the graphic. It's like that, it's hitting a plateau.
Yeah.
Like that, each year, the processing power double, but now we are like over here.
To explain what Canada is trying to say is that before we were like rising up, but now we've gone into like some like curved plateau sort of thing that is sort of like hard to tell. Like, are we really advancing or are we there now?
Are we like stagnated kind of thing? Are we kind of hit like the glass ceiling?
The thing is, the reason why we are stagnating is because now we are on all the materials are so miniaturized that it's extremely difficult nowadays to do even better, because we will need to miniaturize even more, I think, and it becomes extremely hard and complex to make even more miniaturized stuff for improving
the limit
calculation
of the atom. And I think the small computer chip is like 30 nanometers. I don't remember. An atom is like what? 1 nanometers. It's like 30 times bigger than an atom. And then because it's physically impossible to make a material smaller than an atom, a fundamental element, you know?
Yeah, you can't really go smaller than an atom. Like, once you go that small, that's it.
Yeah, so it's so that's why. So that's why I think if we use quantum computers, it might be possible. But until quantum computer become the norm, I think we will never see graphic indistinguishable from real life. That's what I think. That's very far in 50 years.
Yeah,
maybe someday
when you look at I'm sorry to interrupt, Korvac, but when you look at like PC stuff and like there's like kind of like an insane graphics chip that makes like the water physics and graphics actually look like water, and like the shine, the darkness and coloring and like the reflection and all that. Like it kind of looks crazy with like this special like RTX graphics realistic chip or whatever it is. And on my end, like I think we got in like the taste of it in the 7th gen. I think we got in like that taste of it, of that realistic sort of that graphic thing, and I do think we're in like sort of that plateau of like, or in that stagnant state. But I think we're gonna get better. Like it's gonna get better of that closer, like realistic looking graphics and all that. And yeah, I think that's basically my answer. Is that I think we got like that small taste of it, that taste of it from like the 7th gen on PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, we got a bit more like a refined look of that taste, and I think we're just gonna get better on. That's gonna take a while. It's gonna take a while for it to see that perfection of it, but we're kind of getting there.
I'll just echo Doom's point. Like I think we've reached our peak essentially now, especially with the 9th generation. If you go back through Gen 1 to I believe it's Gen 9, yeah. Like you can see it there that there's always been one generation that has had a massive leap, and then one generation that kind of has mostly stayed the same. I do think in about 50 to 70 years though, we'll see like massive leaps. But I think it's going to be something like trickles very slowly, over time. But I think, to me, we're at a point with it where we don't need to keep pushing and pushing and pushing. I think from this point onwards, with new technology like the 4K and 8K, it's possibly going to come in the future, that, we should take it slow, basically, and enjoy it for the ride that it is. These systems are so fast and they're so capable of like so many things and running so many programs. PC is the same with modding,
text. Loading times can get done with like PCs.
No, yeah, so just to bring it all into it. So yeah, like I do think we've hit the plateau. Is it breakable? Yes. But I don't think it's going to be something like we'd have to chip away with. But that's my kind of short answer anyway. A slow but steady breakage, basically.
I just add something about maybe how we could break it. I think it's maybe a little too futuristic, but one way to break the graphics barrier would be to branch the game into our brain directly. Like as if you were the one to generate the game into your brain. I don't know how to do it, but I think this could solve the graphics problem,
VR.
Because you will be
what
the one
what you're talking about there, Korvac, that sounds like basically VR in like 1,000 years or something like that.
Yeah, things like that.
That would be cool.
That is like way beyond our time now.
It will be the next
that would
step.
Be amazing. I will say that would be amazing.
That would be fantastic.
Like one-to-one like comparison of real life to what's inside of like a video game and all that. That would be like the closest we will get, like a one-to-one visual scale.
Yeah, it will be a VR, but actually not just watching a screen on your eyes, but really on your brain.
Yeah, as in you're kind of in the experience. Yeah,
I don't know if it is possible or anything, but I think it will be a solution if it exists. It could be a solution for that barrier.
But our technology is too primitive right now to do something like that.
If I was to give my answer, it would just be kind of just the same as anyone else's, and just that, I mean, I have no doubt we could at some point I don't think we've hit a absolute wall with it per se, but I do feel like we've gotten it as good as it's going to be for now, and that we'll just have to, like, if anything right now, really the focus should be enjoy it for what it is and try to make it easy to maintain and just enjoy the ride for now and work on it later on, because right now we just don't have the tech to really make it any more groundbreaking than what it already is. So we've done what we really could with it. It's just more stabilizing now, in my personal opinion. And I think it can happen to some point, but I do feel like we've hit a plateau for now. I feel like we've kind of hit a wall in a way with it. You ain't gonna be able to really do much more with it unless you do like Korvac said, and like you get to the point where I feel like actually a good way to describe it would be take the event from like the SAO movie where they Shadow, you'll know what I'm going with.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And how
Augmented reality, yeah.
Something like that, then that would be groundbreaking. I feel like that is where you would really groundbreak the graphics there. Because then if you do that, you are literally making your own game wherever you want to walk to, and you could just activate it upon just walking in the street, and then it's just like whenever you want. That would be what I feel like that would be, is where we've hit a groundbreaking point. But like other than that, I really don't think there's much else we can do with it. I feel like we could hit it one day. It's just, I think for now we've but will it stay that way? Nah, I think we can break it eventually.
I'll just add something. Is that we are talking about the plateau, but we have two plateaus, because we have the graphic plateau, but we have also the ecological plateau.
Oh yeah.
Because nowadays it's harder and harder to find materials to create computers, consoles, etc. And we may reach a point where we will not be able to continue creating more and more stuff.
That's why
So
recycling.
this is also a problem.
Okay, I need to add something that I think, to break the graphic plateau, but to break the in other computer science, we need to hire scientists, Dr. Wiley, Robotnik, and Dr. Neocortex together. With these three insane scientists, I'm sure they are crazy enough to reduce the size of the atom. By reducing the size of the atom, we can make even smaller chip, more space, and then make something so powerful to do graphic indistinguishable from real life. So an atom is nanometer, but a picometer, no, femtometer is smaller than an atom. So they should make an atom that's the size of a femtometer. Yeah, that's what they need to do. Femtometer.
I agree.
Because we think the atom are the smallest particle in the universe, but in reality, an atom made of 3 fundamental particles is just like all the colors in the universe are made of the 3 main colors: blue, red, and yellow. Sonic Knuckle and Tails. Those 3, by mixing these 3 colors, we can make a lot of color. And each atom, the data recent discovery, are made by those 3 fundamental particles. We don't know why it is.
Sonic, Knuckles, and Tails have created the universe.
Literally masters.
So we need those scientists to shrink the atoms. Because at our scales, it's physically impossible to make an object smaller than an atom, because all objects are made of atoms. So if we can reduce the atom, we can improve the performance of PC. So that's the only way. But we don't have the technology to do that.
Oh, there's kind of this pitch for that.
Yeah.
Make it real, scientist. You got your pitch. Work with it.
Mainly orthodox, but it might just work.
Okay, so I guess we are all ready for the final subject.
Yeah.
Five. People who grew up during the 7th generation, the PS3, cannot understand how mind-blowing it was to see the graphical jump of the first 7th generation. So do you guys agree or disagree? For example, younger peoples, if they grew up seeing insane graphic like this,
Versus the previous generations.
yes, if the previous generation do not understand how mind-blowing it was to see the graphical improvement.
Go on.
No, go ahead, Doom. You were speaking first. You go ahead. Always.
Well, I was gonna say, like, I think, like, probably at first, when people probably like start playing the like that generate that seventh, eighth, and ninth generations and kind of play like those games. At first, they'll probably disagree and like they'll not like they won't understand the graphical leaps from the previous pretty much 1 through 6 generations. But when they start kind of looking at it and also kind of noticing and comparing between each generation and all that, I think they will understand and agree. I think they will understand like eventually and kind of compare like what they have nowadays and everything to what it is like back then.
This guy is, sorry to cut you, but this guy is a living legend.
Minnie and Danny Kate photograph having just won against the machine of tic-tac-toe. 1950.
Am I okay to speak?
Yeah, I'll just say Shadow.
Go ahead.
Next one.
Yeah, I'll just I'll do a quick answer. I don't know. I'm it's hard to give a definitive answer to this because I've seen this from both angles, as in like I've seen people and kids and young adults that have only done PS3 be like, why would we play those old games? And I remember saying to people a few times going,
yeah, I saw that so many times in my life. I disagree with people who think like that.
So I guess for if I have to give a definitive answer, I'd say I'd agree. I think a lot of kids out there, a lot of younger people, like won't, because younger people today just want things a lot faster. They want to absorb things a lot quicker. And I don't think they're going to go back and take the time to really go back and play these older systems and older games, which is a shame because you're missing out on generations worth of stuff, you know, that's impacted us. Like we're talking about PS3, which basically is a retro system almost at this point. We're talking about PS4, which is on, you know, it's the end of its life cycle. We're talking about PS5, which now is a current, but what's it going to be in the next 10 to 20 years? You know, there's going to be
generation, the next 2 generations.
Exactly. There's going to be PS4 only kids. There's going to be PS5 only kids, PS6 only kids, you know. So we're like, to us, the generation, like our generation, we're going to be ancient by comparison.
Yeah.
You know, we like when we're in our 70s, 80s, we're going to be
goes.
yeah, like
this.
you know,
We are all boomers.
For us, this is
literally, like yeah.
Especially in Canada. Like I think we're the biggest boomers, me in Canada, because I mean we've played as old as far back as the Atari. So I think me and him are like the biggest ones.
So to give you a definitive, I agree. That's wait, repeat the question again to me just so I can like know exactly what it is.
Yeah.
People who grew up in the 7th gen cannot understand how mind-blowing it was to see graphical jumps of the first 7 gens.
Yeah, I can understand. Yeah, I'll agree with that statement as my definitive answer. So
Okay, so in my case, like maybe 15 years ago, I would have agreed with that. But nowadays, I think a lot more children are interested in retro games, and they can see the difference, but they are also interested in old gaming. I know, for example, in my family, I have some children who played like Mario 1, because I had handheld NES like multi-games thing, and they were like, "Oh, I want to play that game. I want to play that game," and they play that game instead of, for example, playing on my computer, who have better games, and they really appreciate those games, despite the graphical improvement with the new generations. Because when you're a kid, you discover the games. So I think if you make the new children discover the old games, I think they are going to appreciate it as much as we appreciated in the past.
As what you call preserving the past to
Yeah,
future.
yeah, definitely.
But it's going to have a lot to do with what games are you going to make them play.
Yeah.
To begin with.
It's kind of involves with the stuff I was saying earlier. It's the matter of which game you play that kind of makes the impact, because
how he influences
certain ones had
because you see all those children now play like what they're playing Fortnite. Fortnite is far from being the most graphical beautiful game we have. They play Minecraft, who is like just a blocky game. It's not especially a graphically beautiful game. They don't care about graphics, at least at the start, but they can also see the appeal of better graphics. But I don't think the children care that much about graphics, or at least I hope.
Because in my case, I had the opposite experience, because let's say that in my family, all the smaller children in my family, for example, if they come to visit me, and I show them a game on PlayStation 1, most of them, they say this reaction that hurt my feeling. They say, "Ew, what is this? Crash Bandicoot? It's ugly. I don't want to play a PlayStation 1." Or Tenchu 2 on PlayStation 1. The graphic is they say something like, "The graphic is so ugly that I don't want to play it." Something like that. But they can play. They can play game on the Sega Genesis or the Super Nintendo, because 2D graphic age well, but maybe a 3D game that didn't age well. I also feel the comment saying it's ugly. Don't tell me you played this ugly game when you were younger. You are weird. So I had so much comment like that. But in my perspective, I feel like younger people cannot appreciate
Honestly, I will agree with them about saying that PS1 games were ugly. Because honestly, most PS1 games were not that great graphically, but I can understand why they would prefer to play 2D games instead of PS1 games. But there are also some beautiful PS1 games, like Final Fantasy IX, for example.
Yeah.
Seven.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
I'd be the last one.
okay, so basically, for
Fire with the
me, number
dragon.
5, I agree with this statement based on my own personal experience. I know I'm only one person out of millions of people on the planet, but
Yeah, same here.
For me, I would say for me, it's hard to give an answer because I've actually kind of had a little dead even 50-50 split of people kind of causing me to say I would agree, but also disagree. Like, I mean, dead 50-50 because, I mean, I've come across a fair bit of people in my time that, yeah, that statement is true as hell. They sit there and act it all like just trying to find the right words here. I've had the experience where it's like kind of been of a split and people have not been able to understand or comprehend the appreciation of it, while the others have. So, but I would have to say in my experience, I feel like I would have to lean more toward the agree because there's a good bit of people that I know if I went out there and I asked family in terms of people I would have to do it for I'm living and stuff, like if I went to them about this stuff, some younger people, yeah, I know they'd be like, what the heck are you even playing? How did you find this amusing? I'm like, I have to be like, look, get past the graphics and just play the game and try to appreciate for how it's played. And that's what makes it beautiful. But not most of them would get it because they're too worried about the graphics over the gameplay. So for me, I would have to agree that a little bit more toward the agreement just because of my personal experience. There's been a lot of people that have had that kind of reaction, like you, Canada, that I've had the same reaction when they get asked stuff like that than they have over disagreeing. So it's like, yeah, I have to agree. Like, I don't think most percentage of people nowadays can understand the appreciation of it and understand just how big the graphical leaps are between the past gens. I don't think most typical people nowadays can, not typical ones.
I think
Unless they
Go on.
play games themselves.
I think we all said like various different things, and yet kind of agreed on like one thing at the same time. I think I just noticed like we all said like the same thing, but like what we're trying to say is like the same thing.
Yeah, like the most average amount of people would not be able to understand. Most
Well, it's
wouldn't.
mainly just like
Some
that
would,
they're not
yes.
willing to try it. I'd say it's just like because PS3 is like to them that's their, that was their into it, so that's what they're used.
I think we are talking about the casual players. Like most of the casual players will not see the graphical jumps.
Yeah,
But
Yeah.
if you're talking about gamers like small gamers,
oh, yeah, no,
they will see the.
would.
Yeah, I agree
I
with
think-
that there.
They would.
It's I think it's like that.
But I'm talking to people like
Okay, I think
yeah, but that's why I said like, it's one of those things of like the people who aren't typical gamers or play games to an even remotely relative basis, no, they wouldn't be able to. But for those that do, oh yeah, no, they'd be able to. I mean, that's a given. But for the ones who don't, yeah, no, they wouldn't. They wouldn't. Unless we got them to sit down and try it. Like they would not.
There is something to kind of put this in mind. There are like some game companies that will like kind of re-release a title of a game to like newer generation consoles and all that. Like look at Sega with how they're kind of bringing like classic Sonic games into modern hardware, or look at the Crash Bandicoot Insane trilogy. That was like
true.
a remaster to the original one, including Spyro with the Reunited trilogy. Even like the SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom, like that's a graphical upgrade. Yeah, like there are some games that are getting like kind of re-release with either like some of them staying the same, like kind of the Mega Man collection of them all staying like in the 8-bit, 16-bit, and all that 2D-bit stuff. And then there's others with like complete remasters of like an actual like kind of like a remastered graphical engine of everything.
Yeah, we've definitely been getting a lot of remastered games as of late. Definitely been a good bit of as of late.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
actually,
and actually
kind of one good example is like look at Sonic Mania. that's a 16-bit game with
Yeah.
kind of like a 3D 32-bit sort of graphic 3D aspect into it in the special stages. But that's mostly a 2D 16-bit game. Look how that did well.
Yeah, it's true. That's actually well.
Yeah.
Really well.
But yeah, I have to agree with that sentence though. I have to agree. But that's just for the people who don't play games. Like at least if it's pertained to the people who don't play games normally, yeah, no, they wouldn't. I mostly agree when it comes to that one. At least for me.
Okay.
That's everything, no?
Yeah, isn't that everything? Is it?
Yeah, it's pretty much everything we want to say, and I think it's the longest podcast I ever did.
Oh, 11:30 to 3:30. So, what? 5
Yeah, we
hours?
started it.
I mean, quickly say
Wow.
quickly 5 minutes with
Yeah,
me, but you did everything you wanted to say. So yeah.
And next
it was
next
very
time
fun.
the next podcast will be 6 hours long.
6 hours and 1 minute.
It might depend on the subject. I have no idea what will be the next subject, the next podcast. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I feel like this
Yeah,
is a
good
good one.
dog.
Yeah,
It will be like one line. It will be like one line and 6 hours long.
A one-line question, and it's 6 hours of a discussion.
Yeah.
no, let's not. Please, let's not do that.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah,
I know.
yeah.
I know what will be the discussion. Will Mario Kart 8, 9 ever come out? Something like that. 6-hour discussion.
Oh, boy.
Which Mario movie is better? The old one, the live action one, or the new one?
I haven't seen either, so I can't say. I really want to go watch both, though.
Of what? Which one?
The Mario movies.
The Mario movie.
Oh yeah, I haven't got to watch this.
The
yet
live
either. I
action
want-
one they made in 1993, I think, or the new one they made this year.
Yeah, no, see, I've watched the older one, the very first ever older one. I've watched that one, but I have not watched the new one. I would like to watch the new one. I would like to.
Yeah, same.
Spoiler: the new one is better than the old one. Huge spoiler.
Okay.
Oh, that's a
good
big
then.
surprise. Have you seen like all the news threads talking about that movie? Crazy. Like, really?
And then, without giving any spoiler, I saw the movie. I love the movie, but all the critics complaining about the movie, I feel like the people who don't understand video game, like they're saying, why did Mario get stronger when he touch a mushroom? Or why is Luigi become stronger
Get the chicken.
by touching that? Something like why did Mario transform into a tanuki and fly? That makes sense. Something like that. It's like
Yeah.
all the video game element they're complaining about. It's like it's a game based on a video game. And then
Yeah,
I
when
saw all the user score, they've given a great mark, but all the critics score a bad mark. It's like they're complaining about
Yeah, I just don't understand that.
you know understand.
I
the
haven't
flame
seen
of-
the new Mario, but even if the new Mario is good, I don't know if he is going to beat my nostalgia for the old one.
Oh, Mario, yeah,
The older one was
nostalgia.
good.
That classic.
I did enjoy it. I remember my first time I watched it. I enjoyed it. It was, I mean, granted, yeah, for the era it was. I mean, it was very, but it was a good movie. I enjoyed it.
Have you seen the Goombas in the live action one? Nightmare Fuel. Well, not Nightmare, just a leap. I've not seen the move. I haven't seen the 1993 live action one. I have not seen it. I've seen some bits here and there, but never seen it.
Maybe you should see it.
For the
I would
movie
like to
that
see
era,
the new one.
They got the live action Mario movie is so bad that it's good. I watched it
It's so
a
bad
few
that
times.
it's
I don't know
good.
how to explain.
That's
The
the
movie
thing.
is so bad that
I
it
get
became
it.
a good movie. But it's a joke at itself to see the movie. I don't know how to explain.
The one thing I will say about that movie, of what I at least a little bit I saw, is the one thing I will say they got it right was the little bomb thing where like you had where like, like wind up the wind up key and the little bomb kind of started walking and
I remember that.
that was like I think like the only thing they got right on that movie.
But the
Just
good part-
one thing. Are we doing another podcast inside the podcast?
Oh no.
No.
I have barely any energy left. I'm scraping by here.
Next time we're gonna do another podcast. That's gonna take a while. But
I know. I would say throwbacks, but I know we kind of all by accident. So we can talk about that more in our own free time later.
Yeah.
Let's-
that's a
so
different.
yeah.
That's something else. So let's wrap it up.
Okay,
But yeah,
so any final comment, everyone?
Just very briefly, thank you for having me on, Canada. Thank you for setting this up. Really loved the presentation of the document. Really loved all the research you did. Thank you so much for preparing it. It was a really great podcast. I had a lot of fun. So thanks a lot, man.
same here. Thank you for inviting me and having a time frame that I could work around. Because thank goodness I ended up having a work day this opening. That way I could get home in time for it. Thank you for inviting me. I was really looking forward to this. So thank you. I had a lot of fun with it.
Well,
I
thank
enjoyed
you
it.
for the podcast. Well, but not thank you for my back for sitting for 4 hours long.
I wasn't expecting this. It's so interesting. I wasn't expecting this.
I had to move around like 4 times.
I don't think any of us was. I don't think any of us was. It just kind of happened. But I mean, hey, is that really such a bad thing?
Not really.
It's not a bad thing, no.
It wasn't that bad, but anyway, thank you again, Canada, for the podcast invite, and it was interesting, kind of like what all of our perspectives were of like each generation and kind of our take of like each generation graphics and all that.
Yeah, it'd be
definitely
great.
interesting.
Okay.
Okay.
For my final comment, is that a shame that not everyone who wanted to join this podcast could join? Is that a shame that not everyone could join?
Yeah, I feel like the other could have joined.
And then the other thing, the other thing, I want to remind all of you that this is a final reminder that you have 1 week and a half to give me your favorite final level music.
Oh yes, yes.
Just in case you forgot.
I will do that tomorrow.
After May
Wait.
31st, after April 30th, it's over. I'm going to start the production of my video, and
Okay.
it could be too late. So it's just a final remember. Just in case. And then the other thing, I think we should do a podcast about this particular thing also. Just a final thing.
Canada or Shadow or anyone, help me go over what the hell he just went later on or some other day when we're hanging out, because I don't remember anything about needing to have a music thing. I don't remember any of that.
It's it's part of his upcoming video project, as far as I remember. He wants like different types of music, basically. So if we can just YouTube him like a final boss theme, basically.
Oh, okay. I'll try to. Okay, I think I get the gist
I
of
made
it.
a
If I have,
video about it. Anyway,
Was it final stage or final boss? I don't remember.
I think it's both, right, Canada?
Your favorite final level music, not final boss.
final level.
Oh, sorry, final level music. Okay, that counts in.
Final level. Okay.
Alright,
With your explanation. But anyway, this is my final take. This console here did the impossible.
The UGO.
The Neo Geo, it should have failed, but it succeeded. It cost over $1,000 at the time, Canadian.
I get it.
Each game, $300. It wasn't a failure, but it created its own market. So this console it's unique that any other video game console should have failed, but this one was a success. It was on the market for like 8 years, which is impressive for what it did.
Yeah.
I don't know what they did. Just like the 3DO and the Apple Pippin, all the super expensive console of the time, they all failed, but it was expensive. But this console is unique in so many ways. It's just impressive. And then on top of that, SNK. And then on top of that, SNK did console for themselves and then for the competitors, Nintendo, Sega, and the TurboGrafx, and they made their own console. This console is unique in so many ways. I don't know. Yeah, but that was my final take.
It's mind blowing.
But the Neo Geo is unique console. But anyway, bye everyone. Thank you all.
Bye, guys. Be safe, everyone.
Goodbye.
Everyone, it was
Bye.
Like and subscribe.
Hanuman Canada.